I know, right? Not like a quick pronouncement. Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, May 1st. Rabbit in Senate
There's
Economic
punch.
Development. Joe Fair, like
No returns.
What? I don't know. You can tell me later.
Anyhow, so we are here on S30, our sister state program. We hoped to give a boost to, a formal boost. Senator Harrison was the reporter of the bill. We have it back. I understand there are significant changes, but we don't have anyone in this morning from our legislative council or the Representative Marcotte has a dentist appointment, so he can't be here. We're just, trying to get a sense of what happened and how the Guard particularly is feeling about the bill now. And we have General Knight and Brigadier General Harder. And General Knight, you're welcome to be on or off camera. I don't know if you wanted to begin, but we're open to hearing what you know.
Great, and I'll let you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm working out of my hotel room. I'm actually, conveniently enough, down here visiting the embassies of our three respective partners and with the ambassadors and country teams. So it's a timely discussion. But overall, I remain in support of this bill. I'm very happy and honored to see that one of the changes was the addition of the adjutant general or designee on this working group. I've only had a quick look at the bill this morning. I do find it to be a very pragmatic approach. What I did discuss with the House Commerce Committee, this is a significant undertaking. I like this bill a great deal because it aligns with what I've been pushing for the past 5 years, certainly since I've been in this job, which is to go beyond a military to military relationship. As you know, we've been part of our state partnership program for over 30 years now with North Macedonia, 16 years with the Republic of Senegal, and entering our second year with the Republic of Austria. In each case, three very different personalities with these relationships. But when I look at the intent of the sister state committee or the working group that leads to what we're going to be doing together, I think it aligns very well. So I remain in support of the bill. I did also note it is a complex undertaking. It's going to take time. Even as a startup, it's going to require us to work with embassies, ambassadors, and country teams. Everyone that I spoke with, and I will bring it up again today with my three partnered states and the ambassadors and their teams, they're in support of this type of effort. And it's a great thing for Vermont. For a small state, we do a lot of international relations that is literally punching above our weight. But the international impact on this strategically is critical for us. And I think the Guard has a role to play here, even as a trusted advisor in providing input, because what we do probably better than anything is build relationships. And that's exactly what this bill is. But that's what I have right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Adjutant General. Brigadier General, do you want to add anything?
Just really just to piggyback on General Knight, I'm here in his stead. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. My name is Brigadier General Henry Harder, and I'm the Deputy Adjutant General for the Vermont National Guard. So General Knight's deputy. And as he said, he's down in DC today, but he had some time in his schedule, so it's great that he's online.
And could you remind us our three sister states are Senegal, Macedonia,
and Austria.
That's of course Austria.
So yeah, North Macedonia started in 1993, which was the birth of the state partnership program.
Yes.
And then 2008, we added Senegal and West Africa. And then in 2022, we added Austria, which has been very active.
And we used to have that state part of Russia.
Well, that's sister cities.
Karelia.
Karelia. Oh, yes. Yes.
So what happened to that?
Yeah.
Well, that I'm sorry, that was not part
Right,
of
that
the
was
National
the
Guard
Guard
state partnership.
Oh, well,
program.
it wasn't National Guard, it was
Yeah.
but it was a statewide sister state.
Yes, that's when Project Harmony.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, how does that intersect with this?
Right, exactly.
Went to Karelia.
We need to understand that because I wasn't even aware of this.
Yeah, because the law.
The military, and what do you call this?
So the state
Military-
partnership program,
State
it's a Department of Defense program that aligns with the State Department. And so the Department of Defense, they support the program, they resource the program, and then they give it to the adjutant generals of the 54 states and territories in the District of Columbia to execute. And it's been incredibly
It's
successful.
robust, it's hands-on, it's very first impression. I mean, this has been, if we have any success of, that kind of interrelational
Right.
partnership, it's the guards program, so it's.
So,
Well, but we heard good things about the program.
oh, the
in-
one.
No, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
they're not good, this is just very active,
Well,
it's,
so
yeah,
was this. I mean, we had a very active,
yeah.
twice a year exchange with the law school with Vermont and Corellia.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm just saying, when it's active and robust, can you give us an example of an initiative that, for example, Austria is working on with us?
Yeah, sure. There's
We were at Husky, we were all invited to Husky a couple.
Well, there's that, and,
Yeah.
and as General Knight says, and the program has morphed over time. Interestingly enough, earlier on in the earlier years with both North Macedonia and Senegal, we had the ability to kind of be a catalyst or a spark tank to bring civilian businesses with us on some of these exchanges and hopefully start a catalyst, which happened with North Macedonia. If I can
Yeah.
step back. One was we had a biology professor from we were able to get her over there for graduate students, supported by the state partnership program. And they have Lake Oak Ridge, which is a freshwater lake similar to Lake Champlain.
Yeah.
And then it was off and running. They started a program that they exchanged between UVM and the local Lake Oak Ridge Research Center there. And it's just something that the state partnership program wasn't entitled for. To answer your question, man, with Austria, General Knight has started several different efforts with the country of Austria. One of them is with Norwich University, and it's in its infancy now. But to have Austrian cadets come over and attend either a year of classes or longer at Norwich with the Corps of Cadets, and then to have ultimately Vermont students potentially go over to the Austrian Military Academy, which has many more years of history than our own military. So that's one that
And earlier this year, maybe it was fall, we signed an MOU with Austria on apprenticeships and work
exactly.
partnerships at Husky.
Yes, and so there's all those things, and General Knight might be able to speak more to the Husky. I'm not intimate on the details of that.
Yeah, we had the ambassador visit.
I have to get to my
Okay,
other committee, so if you would like me to say anything, I'm happy to do it now.
oh, great, okay, so we have Senator Hardy, I don't know if you wanna get in the witness chair, or just say whether or not you support this version of.
Either way, if you would like,
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the details because they're two pretty different programs. So
Well, we don't have time to talk about the details of the programs, we need to talk about S30 and if we.
no, I
support
understand, but
S30.
it's a significant
You can-
change to
You can close it
put it with this other program as
Mhm.
opposed to being on its own.
Yeah,
hi.
Which may be a good
Jill, can
thing,
you-
but I just wanna understand it.
I'm Senator Ruth Hardy from the Addison District, and I was the lead sponsor of S30. I didn't hear the entire conversation that you just had about what's going on with the guard. And the bill as it came over to us back from the House. I understand the need to have a sort of longer look at what we do with this. And so I appreciate that, and I've spoken with Chair Marcotte about their conversation in their committee. One of my concerns with the language as it came back to us, compared to how it left the Senate, is that it is very much focused on military partnerships. And the original intent of the bill and the intent of sister state relationships more broadly
Yeah.
and what they were created for is really supposed to be for humanitarian, cultural exchange, educational exchange. And in fact, sister state relationships grew out of the damage between countries after wars. So our relationships have been with Russia and Japan and a lot of countries that are former military, adversaries. It's one of the ways that is used to sort of repair those relationships is having this sort of humanitarian, cultural, educational, economic relationship.
So you haven't been as privy to the Guards partnerships, because that's still what they are, I would say. They're very much about, helping them with any cultural, commercial, economic.
Yeah, but it's
partnership.
still under the umbrella of a military partnership. And I think that I'm all for having the Guard involved in whatever sister state. But I think the language that is in the bill as it came back to us is too focused on military, and it loses that. I look back at the bill as it left the Senate and as it was introduced. The relationship fosters understanding and collaboration between residents, governments, businesses, and community organizations. And the language as it came back was from the House is really focused on military personnel and people working there. And it really should be about the people in, Vermont residents and residents of Totori or Karelia or wherever we have the sister state relationship. And not filtered through a relationship with the military.
Okay.
So I'm concerned with that, and I also think, and I spoke with Senator Harrison about this, is really that we have in our state several higher education institutions that have deep relationships internationally. The School for International Training in Brattleboro, Middlebury College and its language schools and international schools abroad. Probably UVM too, but especially
law school,
and yes,
a lot of countries.
but particular SIT in Middlebury, that is what they are known for. That is what they are good at, and they have deep relationships that we should build on. And I don't doubt that the Guard does too, but focusing so much on the Guard's international relationships and not focusing on higher education, cultural exchanges. I mean, we have like the Vermont Youth Orchestra going abroad and performing internationally, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And should not be filtered through a military relationship. So I guess that's my
Okay, so
concern and
that's helpful.
my
Yeah, I mean,
request that,
we have to move on.
yes, I hear you and I have to go, but.
Yeah, so I would say if the two of you want to work on language to concur with further proposal of amendment, you're welcome to do that, and we can give this another 15 minutes before we adjourn. That's probably the best I can do on this, because.
Yeah, no, I
That's
totally get
fine.
it. You guys
That's
are
fine.
busy.
And I hope you can work with the Guard.
No, I want to work with the Guard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not that I don't want them involved,
Yeah,
I just don't
yeah.
want them to be the dominant person,
Right.
entity.
Right. Before we let our Guard folks go, I just want to let you know, former Representative Rachel Weston was one of the first legislators to go with you on one of these trips to Northern Macedonia. She works for the UN now with her husband, and they're moving from Istanbul to Vienna. We're gonna go visit them in Vienna next year. So her and her husband work for the UN. I think the Northern Macedonia trip was a real catalyst for her to get involved in international work. And I would love to put you all back in touch. I think she was on the first trip to Macedonia.
Great,
though.
sounds great.
Yeah.
And I think General Knight and Tess, I think our relationship would dovetail very well to what they
Yes,
said.
yes,
absolutely.
Because
But
most
it
of the,
begin in a broader.
yeah, I mean, there are certain advantages of resourcing and stuff that you might get through that. And it
Exactly.
doesn't always have to be through a lens of a military construct.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
that's what General Knight is going for, is
Yeah.
more of what we call the civ to civ, civilian to civilian.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for being here and for your time. And it sounds like there will be some collaboration. Thank you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you. We're moving on to Canvas. And I want to start with the chair of Cost Government Operations.
Wendy.
You can get in the witness chair, Representative McCarthy. You can't schedule right now. Can you do that outside of the Allison? Allison, we need to focus.
I'm available.
Okay. I do want to remind people, and it got around the building, that I might kill this bill. That's not the case, but everything will live or die this week. We are just simply running out of time, so I have to keep us really on track, and I hope you will help me with that. We are gonna start with Mayor McCarthy and talk about some of our discussion yesterday and why the House had landed where they landed on things like setbacks, et cetera. He heard that we really want interim setbacks and still want a study to sort of flesh this out, but that they feel strongly about interim setbacks that would help resolve some issues sooner than that.
Thank you very much, Chair Ron Hinsdale. So I'm Representative Mike McCarthy from St. Albans, and I am the Chair of the House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee. On the House side, we have a Cannabis Control Board policy jurisdiction. So we really were trying to thread a needle and not be incredibly disruptive while trying to give some power back to municipalities to have some influence over where cannabis cultivation outdoors could take place inside of their communities. The original idea that came from some of the reps from Essex that have a specific grower in a residential area. I'm sure you're familiar with that case. But there are a couple of other instances, and we also want to try to think about future instances where there are places where we can all just kind of agree it doesn't really make sense to like grow 1,000 square feet of commercial cannabis 20 feet away from your neighbor's deck, right? There are just places where I think we can all kind of look at each other straight
What's
face.
the intention?
But then when you actually look at our laws and practice, what we did over the course of the last few years in order to make sure that we were allowing cultivation to happen across the state was to basically remove all local control completely from the process. And this is trying to, we started with some mechanisms around, density maps that would have been hard to enforce and been unclear. We looked at some things around, places that have water and wastewater as we were looking at that with some other bills, right? And I had the idea in consultation with Mike O'Grady. In my business and my day job, like we're subject to setbacks with solar that are in state law that are hard setbacks. This is much softer than that. What we're saying in the House passed version of this bill is that if a municipality wants to set setbacks, they have to identify areas where they prefer cultivation to happen, and they can have a very small setback in those up to 50 feet. And then in areas where they do not prefer, if they set up a preferred area, they can go as far as 100 feet. I know there's been some discussion of making those smaller, very open to that. But this is really about local control. So I don't want us as a state establishing setbacks. I don't want this to be a blanket across the state, but I think giving some municipalities the ability to say, listen, in our densely populated residential areas,
Right.
we want to say you got to at least be away from your neighbor's property boundaries. So that's what this is really about. And it is very important to many people in the House. I think it's important to some senators.
I was not
important to
gonna
member
be
communities.
excited to deliver the news that.
Yeah, so just wanted to come in and say, if there are things we should talk about between the House and the Senate as we're
Right.
trying to wind things down.
Yeah.
I wanted to offer up that want to collaborate with you all to get this right.
Yes, and we want to find agreement so that, because we're not gonna have time for comments committee, I imagine, on either of our ends, but one of the things that Chair Pepper had brought to us was that if we do this for certain residential areas, there are other communities that could force a setback that changes the conditional use of a property that had previously been categorized for agriculture, and that could stop them from getting a permit reissued by their town. Is that something that we just heard that there might be other consequences, and we weren't sure if you had looked into that?
This in and of itself does not do that, according to what we heard. And so I think it's really important before we go down the road of thinking that this will have that knock-on effect, really talking with legislative counsel about that, because that is not what we understood. What we understood was that what we were doing was just curating. Well, Michael O'Grady actually.
That's right, he did come in for this.
It's just this piece, so yes, Michelle
Yeah.
Childs was the
No,
main
thank you for the
drafter.
reminder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mr. O'Grady did
okay.
just these pieces around the Cannabis Cultivation District.
Senator Parkinson.
So your brainchild was to create these to give local control was to create these cannabis cultivation districts.
Exactly.
Which I actually think is a great idea because we took away so much local control on cannabis. I mean, quite frankly. And I support this, but I also think that where we sort of landed as an interim was to create an interim time and measure and have them come back with having looked at all the challenges they said they were sort of thinking that had cropped up since this bill was passed for the House. They have a chance to come back and create and really recommend firm things that we want to actually put in statute going forward. The Cannabis Control Board, with a bunch of its stakeholders, I think wanted more time to pick out all the ramifications of
That was not my understanding of the Cannabis Control Board's position, so that's very different from what we heard.
Mhm.
What we understood is the Cannabis
Am I
Control Board,
representing that correctly?
just wanted to be- they wanted us to be very clear about
That's
the
fair.
what the local.
Yeah,
you both are right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they either want clarity or, you know, if we really are forcing them to actually come back to us with some sense of what the impact would be, they want time to do that, and they left it up to us whether we influence existing situations or not in the interim. And so,
What I would
We want
argue
that.
is that we should allow the local conversations to happen. That
And that's what this does.
Right. What this does
Yeah.
is it's permissive. It allows municipalities, if they meet all these requirements of setting up a preferred district, that they can set setbacks up
Yeah.
to whatever amounts we allow. And if you
Right.
don't limit what those amounts are, I think that's reasonable. We can disagree about whether it should be 50 and 25 or
Yeah.
150,
yeah,
but when you look at the maps of a couple of these instances, I just don't think we ever intended for commercial cannabis cultivation to happen in those places.
Right.
The communities really are
Oh.
saying we need
Yeah.
to be able to set some reasonable limits on where this can happen. And I hope that we won't delay the ability for those local conversations to happen.
Mhm.
There's no reason why a municipality, won't interact, and they already are with local growers. I don't think that our municipalities want to hurt local business people. But I think that
They're balancing
striking the
a lot,
balance,
yeah.
and this would just allow them to have that conversation locally, as opposed to the complete prohibition on any kind of limit on outdoor cultivation that we have today.
but you're okay if we treat those setbacks as interim until we get more information next year.
Yeah, I mean, but I think just thinking that through logically, if we give a community the ability to like establish cultivation district and go through that process and they set setbacks, we can always change the law. We can find a future general assembly, but I would want us to be really clear about what do we mean by interim.
Yeah.
So that, because we don't want to create confusion and have
Yeah.
like a cascade of sort
I
of
think
fights
that's
about-
why we didn't change the setbacks in the interim, was because we didn't want to be judge, jury, whatever, for one situation when we didn't know the impact on other areas. So, I wish we could just give more discretion in these particular situations, either to the municipality or to the Cannabis Control Board. One of the things I threw out there was, if you're on less than an acre, the Cannabis Control Board has the authority to set more specific siting requirements and setbacks. Pepper was open to that because it was very specific. Still, he wants specifics.
Yeah, this allows the municipality to choose the specificity
Right.
within a narrow.
But
Yeah, but 50 feet is a lot for some places that aren't residential.
But 50 feet, I mean, the cannabis has an impact. Well, just like lots of aspects of farming. So just as we envision step by step, this first step is that a town has to create a cannabis cultivation district. And then
Take a while.
then they have to adopt their own setbacks. Then they get to choose what the setbacks are.
That's right, up to these amounts. So this is not that we're saying it has to be 50, but they could go with 20. But it's just that we created a maximum so that we did not want to allow municipalities, especially in agricultural, areas where farming's, other activities that look like this are happening, to set like a 200-foot setback and basically virtually eliminate all ability for outdoor cannabis cultivation. We're trying to.
Yeah, and you try to look at a density measure, but it just didn't work.
It completely was impossible. It just.
You've been in law.
It practically was unenforceable. There was
Yeah,
no
yeah.
way for the Cannabis
Right.
Control Board or the locals to come up with what are the,
Yeah.
which maps and what do we mean by density? And how specific can you get to a neighborhood? It was just not practical.
So, well, I think that the cannabis could, I think that, it's helpful actually hearing, I wish we'd heard you before we had our conversation yesterday. Because I'm very sympathetic to the local control piece and very sympathetic to the, wearing our GovOps hats. I think that this is, that they know what their densities are, they know what is practical in their communities. It does make sense to set those up right away and get them working. And actually, I think if those setbacks are up to, I am actually more comfortable than I was yesterday with moving ahead on that.
We should let you go and move on to other witnesses.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's very
Thank
helpful.
you, it is helpful.
Yeah,
Good luck.
Thank you first.
well, like we could take back that half an hour
So
conversation.
I'm gonna go
Right.
to Graham and Jeffrey just because we've moved them a couple times and they're not usually in the building.
Can we both come at the same time?
Yeah, of course, yeah, just flip another chair.
Yeah. Perfect.
So I think Jeffrey had his share screen, to walk you all through our.
And are you also with the growers? Did you want to introduce yourself? Okay, okay.
Thank you all for having us.
Mhm.
My name is Brady Strufenach. I'm the policy director at an organization called Rural Vermont. We've been around for nearly 40 years now, working at the intersections of agriculture, equity, and sovereignty.
Yeah. I know.
Do you want to manage the social equity fund?
We have both.
Okay.
Jeff.
No.
Well, Jeffrey
You're back.
introduce himself.
That's a good, not a bad idea.
And for the record, pardon me, good morning, everybody. Thanks for the time this morning. My name is Jeffrey Pistello. I'm the executive director and co-founder of Vermont Growers Association. Growers in our name. We're very proud of our dues-paying members that are the entire supply chain, retailers, wholesalers, product makers.
How many members do you have?
Just under 100. We're growing. So,
No pun intended.
yeah, exactly. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, so we're a member organization for Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition, which also includes the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont, the Green Mountain Patients Alliance. And collectively, that means we represent thousands of constituents of yours, of people around the state. So we have two of the three largest member-based agricultural organizations in the state as part of this coalition, the largest cannabis membership-based organization in the state, and I would imagine the largest cannabis patient-based organization in the state. And one thing I just want to bring to you all to begin with, as the committee of jurisdiction in the Senate for Cannabis, the way we work in the agricultural sector, at least in the ag committees, is that at the beginning of each session, we're invited in as membership organizations to speak to the committees about our priorities and to the community. That hasn't really been how this has been happening in the House or the Senate with this issue. And we would really appreciate have that relationship with you all, not in any sort of oppositional manner, but more as partners in here.
If it makes you feel better, we didn't get to do that with spirits or wine or really almost anybody because we've been busy with housing.
Housing is certainly a crisis that we're dealing with in all of our various specialties.
Yeah.
Um,
But we do apologize that, I will sort of set the table again that this committee's job, once something is legalized, is to treat it like a fair market and make sure you do have the opportunity to grow and not be treated entirely differently. Because we've made the decision to legalize and regulate this market. So, we balance that with the medical marijuana is with health and welfare right now, but you're in the right place and making the right case.
I think we'd be very aligned in that case. So Jeffrey has the document we want to share on the screen, but you also all may have it.
Let's share the screen, that'd be great.
But you probably need to shine.
Do you can pull it up or do you want?
Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Oh, want me to send it to you?
Oh, sorry, I had sent you the Zoom link, so if you join the Zoom,
That sounds great.
And then just
I
turn
can
your
send
volume
it
down.
again.
If you wouldn't mind sending that,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Thank you.
Should get.
Thanks.
Maybe I'll start because I think the first sections were in agreement with, and I'll just go through them. First section is about the temporary products thing. I don't think we need to get to that. We're supportive of the work done on that here, which allows the CCD to pivot using them.
We jump around a lot, so don't assume we know.
Yeah, can you say that again?
Okay, sure. I'll just wait till I get it.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just wait.
Section 1, you agree?
Actually,
But I think we
Although-
can move past section 1 then.
We identified an issue with the definition being in conflict with something else.
You know, I
Rule.
think the Cannabis Control Board came in that they wanted.
yeah, we saw a sort of technical amendment.
And you are okay with their proposed change, because I think that's dangerous.
Try not to give this up.
Two.
Example.
Just got.
Yeah, we have very slow internet.
It takes a while.
Really? Is it slow?
Because we're
Especially in this
frugal,
room.
because we're frugal, that we have.
Our room doesn't have a Wi-Fi modem, but most rooms do.
Yeah,
They do. I'm only learning this today.
this has been,
Maybe while we're just about there, I would just say that I think one of our frustrations with this session is that we're talking about things that which we don't see as priorities. You know, which in some cases we feel is regressive and it's not actually reasonable responses to issues that are sort of on the ground. Conversation is just being had. And we'll get to that, but there was one
oh, you mean kind of regressive to the movement of allowing the
regressive
industry to grow?
regressive to
Right.
to steps towards equity that the legislature has taken.
Right,
Towards
yes.
equity in the marketplace.
You mean the
market equity,
setback
to-
being all the sudden?
to equity in sort of agricultural status.
Yeah,
And also just sort of representation.
yeah. I will say, like, we don't have time to get into this one situation, but that person seems like he's doing a disservice to the larger movement,
I agree.
because I don't know why we're hearing about this, that it's driving too much of the
The
conversation.
town does not solve conflict mediation, they keep straight to legislature with a very.
Turn your volume down.
So we won't, like, I really don't even want to get into it, but I wish we weren't in a position of responding to one situation.
Well, it's called the question on the possibility of
Mhm.
it happening in densely populated areas.
Right, yeah,
So, and that was something I suppose we should have addressed.
yeah,
Well, we can talk about it, but I think it's important that you actually engage with the stakeholders who are gonna be impacted and take a reasonable amount of time to study the situation as close
Yeah,
to where it wants to
that's
happen.
what our plan
That's
was
what we
and
talked about
is
yesterday.
potentially, but
Well-
if you could, I do want in the time we have for you to address who you think might be impacted, but I do think by next year, it's the general intent of our committee and probably the House to flexibly give some resolution process to reducing outdoor cultivation in backyards in densely settled areas. We don't allow people to slaughter goats in backyards in our densely settled areas. We don't.
We're not scale appropriate regulation. We're not opposed,
Sorry, you
we're
were
not
trying to-
opposed to scale appropriate regulation.
Okay,
We're in support of. due
if you want to
process.
recommend something
We will.
today,
Yeah.
that would be
It's in
great.
this document, which
Oh,
is
good,
essentially
okay,
we-
perfect, okay, we have
Um,
this, great.
So section 1, and Jeffrey probably knows this better than me. Do you want to deal with section 1 quickly, Jeffrey?
You're on with section 1, right?
Certainly, and just to be brief, this is a section that we support, and if anything, we did propose, some language to strengthen it a little bit, but
Okay.
overall, it is a good measure, that our coalition supports, that would protect the viability of our market.
Great.
With hemp-derived products, so that's,
Great.
we're glad that's in there, yeah.
No, I just saying, check, just, you don't have one.
Exactly.
Well, there's no one on it that's not
I
me.
think we need to go for section.
That's
we need to
page
skip
6,
section
12.
2.
I'll follow your lead.
But it was just.
Sounds like we'll skip section 2 again.
No, I did, yeah.
This is being struck.
Well, you said you supported it, but,
Section 2 is struck.
Yeah, exactly.
okay.
That's great.
Do you want to skip section 3 at all? Because that was sort of being debated at all.
Not really, I think that's over in health and welfare,
Yeah,
that's
and I
also
will just say, like,
Yeah,
we honestly don't even have time to second guess their work.
precisely.
Which is not good process, I get that, but
All of these sections are such great conversations, but understood.
yeah,
4, you want to take 4 a little bit? That's rules with regards to cultivators.
Sure, I mean, I think in general, we oppose giving the CCD further authority to limit retail licensing 3 years into the nascent market. You see here, There's an effort by a small number of retailers to further concentrate their market leverage by limiting retailer licensing to state as unjust and threaten market viability.
Sorry, I like don't consider myself older or hard of hearing, but you're just talking really fast and you can slow down. Like Jill can come back, you know, Jill finds us.
Okay,
You have until 10 a.m.
okay,
so-
let's.
Yeah.
Cause I just wanna make sure I'm really hearing you.
Yeah,
Dr.
okay, I'll slow down. Sorry, I can't speak fast.
Yes,
Sometimes
Slow
I
it
have
down.
to.
Channel your inner rural.
yeah. Cause we need to remind ourselves what this does. I mean, truly,
Yeah.
we're about to go from sister state programs with Macedonia to housing.
Yeah,
And in between, we have this, so
sure.
we just
Okay.
wanna make sure we haven't lived with this bill in
So-
section.
Yeah, and so at the bottom of this, of what's shown on the screen, an effort by a small number of retailers to further concentrate their market. That's the issue. Sounds
This issue would add new criteria to the rules for cultivators that would allow the CCB to use performance criteria to determine if grower is eligible to increase their tier size or decrease it. We would add new criteria to the rules for retailers. That would allow the CCB to use geographical distribution, population, and needs to determine initial retailer licensure criteria for MUB retailers, those are if they can get those licenses to serve the medical patients.
Yes.
And I think part of our concern here is, and I'll just read what we wrote here, is that there's been this narrative about quote unquote market saturation. And we think this really misleading narrative. It's really about there being a bottleneck at retail.
Mhm.
Legislature has set this market up in a very inequitable way, such that the only people who can sell products to the public directly are retailers. Those are plants, that's manufactured products, that's flowers. When we talk about market saturation, what you're seeing is a bunch of producers, so a lot of products. You have retailers saying we're turning away good product because you don't have any shelf space.
Okay.
So we talk about powers municipalities do or don't have, they still have opt-in powers, which means they have a significant amount of power in this marketplace. They can allow whether or not cannabis will be sold in those areas. What this law does essentially is cave to this false narrative of market saturation to say, we want to further limit retailers based on geography. They are already geographically limited in a way such as certain people in certain geographies, medical or otherwise, have to travel to other geographies where it's allowed by the municipality to even access the product. So we just don't think it's actually a problem and a solution.
So you recommend a study? It looks like. Oh, you're just.
Or
just
not
looking like
doing this.
21. Okay, okay.
And just to add to that,
Yeah.
to speak to where the market is right now, and to sort of speak to that some numbers behind this bottleneck that Graham is describing. We are what we call a retail opt-in state. And, as of this past town meeting day, we've got something like 77 towns, localities out of 247 that have allowed retail sales of regulated cannabis. So that's about 30% of the state. So just imagine if 30% of the state was allowed to sell here, right? Producers would be dealing with this bottleneck to access customers for the market to allow product to flow. So it's an important part of the conversation.
Yeah, and if you had the numbers in terms of population, because 77 towns could be the majority of the population. But it depends on which towns.
It could,
That would be helpful to know. You don't have to say it now though.
and I think great point, and also adding to that point is geographical.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of them are in Canada.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen it. We've seen the map of where they are.
We have?
They're all over.
Okay, I don't know that. I was.
I mean, you do have to maybe
If you
drive.
wanna email the map or somebody has the.
We live in Montford.
Just send it to us quickly.
I would say
drive
the
to
CCD
Woodstock,
did a
but that's
fine
not
job,
something like-
but
Yeah.
they're limited in where they can license.
Yeah.
So-
Okay.
Okay.
Section 5 is the medical use endorsement. Do you want to speak to that?
So sorry, I guess I'm not finally clear about what you want us to do in section 4. What your ask is for section 4. Your ask is,
We would strike the aspect of giving the CCB further authority to limit retailing license based on geographical location. Or limit retailing licensing period.
Do you know if this was like designed to solve some problem about Burlington has too many or like, is that do local municipalities have the authority to say, you know what, like, that's enough? Because, for example, cabaret licenses, like, I know a lot of large municipalities can say, we have enough places that serve more alcohol than food, and we're gonna permit additional ones. And I know it's tough for businesses to hear that, if they open and then they want a cabaret license. But I'm just trying to balance how we treat other regulated product, and so.
I can say the narrative we heard is really just around market saturation, that we need to limit the ability to have new licensees in this marketplace.
Okay.
Saturated.
I mean, I don't wanna solve a statewide problem just for Burlington, so
But also
I'm
that's,
happy to serve.
that's not what I heard from CCB, and maybe I'm wrong, Wendy, and I heard that they want to ensure geographic distribution.
I'm looking at the wording, and it said location or siting requirements that increase the geographic distribution of new cannabis retail establishments based on population and market needs. Requirements for medical use, not endorsement, including rules.
I thought that
I thought they were trying to
improve it.
prove it.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
what I thought too.
The top of that page where it says
What page?
performance standards, page 8, that would allow the board to relegate a cultivator to a lower tier, to expand it to a tier. That was to control for excessive supply, the note that I have.
Yes, that
Um,
piece, but the
But
rest,
then there's also increasing geographic
Right.
distribution, so it sounds like they're trying to work on some of what you want, but not all of
Sure,
what
and
you
with that stated intent, we know that they, for instance, cannot, right, change the retail opt-in mechanism, that is, so they cannot, right, license retail
Right,
shops
yeah.
in localities where they have not, the council have not voted
Right.
in. So, I think that while that intent is there, I think,
Yeah.
that really would enable us to limit
regulates.
within the localities that they're allowed to license in.
Functionally, that means their only power they have is to limit geographic distribution.
Okay,
So, and I'll say this, just to add to the conversation, I think our perspective as the Growers Association is not a terrible idea, a little too early to consider it, especially
Mhm.
considering where the rest of the market is, that's all.
maybe
If-
for.
if that's fair.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to back clean up on Friday, give you a half an hour to do that. We'll like dwell on these things. Someone's gonna tell the House this, but things that are extremely controversial or that we feel like has an impact that we don't understand, we're gonna have to weigh whether they move forward at all.
Sure.
And what, or we look more at the impact. We just, I'm not gonna blame House Government Operations, they gave us this bill on time. But we have had, a lot to do.
But it's a lot
I would
of.
draw your attention to the last line of the
Yeah.
paragraph, which is rather than limit retail licensing, it would be better for the healthy market to expand and decentralize the points of access for the general public by replacing retail opt-in with opt-out and implementing direct sales for small producers and manufacturers.
Right,
That's the big issue.
we have had a valve on those things for like microbrews and raw milk and I just wanna make sure we recognize. Because we share this jurisdiction with a lot of other committees, there's often the how much do we let of the proliferation of direct sales happen?
We have proposals,
Okay.
Tanya Bachowski wrote one up for us, Heather Supernaut did as well, they've been
Okay.
in 2 bills, we flipped that language and the recommendations here could easily be put in the bills. I think my
Okay.
greater point is that, again, we're not talking about important things to people in the marketplace, we're talking about priorities that were inserted here by people who we don't feel represent the best interests of the population.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been told for years that these are good ideas, just keep coming back, and we keep
Yeah.
being told there's no time to hear. So I think you
Yeah.
have to understand that we're feeling a little frustrated.
Yeah, yeah,
There's also false narratives that are being perpetuated with false solutions, which are further driving inequity in market
Right.
power and against people who have the market power.
yes, I will apologize for that this year. I mean, we've had the flood and we've had a lot going on.
It's structurally inequitable, just so,
Right.
because, Senate committees only get 3 hours a day as opposed to the House committees that get all day. So when a bill comes to us from the
Yeah.
House, we sadly don't have the same amount of time they have with our bills, because it's just, they get double the time.
Well, I really appreciate how you went on other committees, and I think that we're gonna push the House to do that as well, since it's back in the
Yeah.
House, we're gonna get time to House Ag.
Good. Yes,
Yeah.
and we're trying to talk to Senate Ag as well, so, Yeah.
The MUE, did you wanna briefly, we're running a long time, so maybe we should just go to what we wanna focus on.
Yeah, it's a medical section that we support, we support decentralizing for the benefit of the patients and registered caregivers. The
Okay.
medical program is important. Section 6 is medical as well.
Yeah.
7 is medical. 8 is medical, support.
as well.
Yeah, jump down
Yeah,
to.
go to the most important thing.
Executive
I think
session.
the most
For you,
important thing is
and
what they
you
just-
really need to tell us your.
And you have until basically Ellen walks in the door, which I just imagine. is
Well, I'm gonna go
right.
briefly through
We're up to
sections.
section 12?
I'm going there quickly because I want to say that we appreciate the inclusion of section 12 proposes to exempt farm buildings used by licensed outdoor cannabis cultivators and the outdoor portion of mixed use cultivators from the definition of public buildings for fire safety requirements. This is enjoyed by other agricultural producers more broadly. This was spoken to by farmers and cultivators directly as a need. What we find disappointing is that the CCB and the legislature is not willing to hear other very reasonable proposals for increasing aspects of agricultural status. The three listed here, providing outdoor cultivators agricultural wetland exemptions, allow outdoor cultivators to produce on non-abutting parcels or stand numbers, and tier 1 employment allowance issues. Those were all brought before the Senate Ag Committee in February by producers themselves.
What
They
happened?
were
Yes, I
also
think I
brought
remember
to the House Government Operations Committee by producers themselves. And we see that no one has spoken against them, and they have not been considered at all.
Okay.
So those are very reasonable things we would love to see in the bill. We can bring producers before you to speak to why those are important to them. Some of them lost tens of thousands of dollars.
So Graham, were those not taken up by either committee?
Well, correct, but as you may know, in Senate Agriculture, we went in early.
Yeah, February was early.
Well, we need to take the opportunities we can, given what I told you about the history of us.
Mhm.
And they don't actually have the bill, like they can't, there's sort of a challenge of like what they can and can't put in. We reminded them of our recommendation. I'm not sure what you've heard from that, sort of in the dark to me.
If. I don't wanna be flippant, but if you could prioritize one that is really costing thousands of dollars of these, and we can sit down with Senator Starr and kind of focus on the details of that one, I can at least present it back to the committee. I'm trying to sort of include Senate Agriculture.
Yeah,
Well,
just looking at these, the middle one, to me would be the less controversial, because growing in wetlands, that's a big
That one has
ask.
to go to natural resources.
Well, and it's a big ask. I mean, wetlands are important, and then not having safety for employees, being exempt from fire code regulations.
We're not gonna.
That's a pretty big ask too. I'm not saying we can't talk about it, but then one identified span number, non-abutting parcel, that seems like not.
Yes, I remember when we did that for beer and other alcohol, like, if it wasn't contiguous, it's like you couldn't go from Trap Lodge to their
Right.
brew pub and serve. So,
So this would not, non-abutting parcels.
yes,
it-
non-contiguous.
It's like where you grow your
Yeah.
stuff, where you sell it.
Yeah, I see, that would have more of a conversation, but it wouldn't be as difficult a conversation than the other two.
I agree, if we can keep working on the language of that one with agriculture.
And actually, we are expecting new language from the Division of Fire Safety and CCB. They, there's the change coming that we still haven't seen.
Right. Cause Michelle we pushed Michelle off because of timing.
Do we?
Yeah, I have a note, fire safety needs to determine how to regulate the farm building, but I thought that just had to do with the drawing. I didn't know it had to do with the employees.
Yeah.
No, it's OSHA, there were OSHA.
Oh, okay, so they're working
I'm
on
gonna,
that
I'm
actually.
gonna ask
Then
David
when you work
Mickenberg
on-
to pull the stakeholders together on that one if you can, to get us with.
Which one is that?
The fire
The
safety.
non-abutting.
Okay,
No, the span number, because
Yeah.
I think we're expecting new language
Okay.
on this other thing, we're just finding out if we have it.
okay.
And,
Especially if we do anything with setbacks in the interim, we should at least allow more growth area where
Sure.
there's not a setback issue.
You know, I will say just very briefly, in terms of employment, what that means, boots on the ground, is it's really seasonal. So, come the fall, we have tier 1 licensees that are really being restricted to, what we would think and what they would share is an unrealistic amount of labor for a seasonal, time-sensitive
Yeah.
ag commodity.
Yeah.
So they want the capacity to bring on trim teams and more individuals to help them process that in a.
what's
That's
stopping
the
it?
tier one.
Totally.
you mean?
Exactly.
Yes,
Okay.
But what's stopping?
the fire code,
Oh, right, and that's what,
But-
we got the new language.
Okay,
but we want the trim teams to be safe.
okay,
Yeah.
But the fire
Perfect,
safety
right.
folks are working on
Okay.
language for that.
so we look
Yeah.
forward to that then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll see that and we'll work on the span number parcel
Thank you.
piece.
I think we have time to sort of focus on two more sections in particular, and
Uh-huh.
one, if you.
Sorry, we have this You've sent your.
Yes.
Documents.
So we're jumping to 15?
15, you spoke with Pepper about both of these. This is about the Cannabis Business Development Fund.
Mhm.
So we're gonna skip through our long time recommendations for this and community reinvestment.
Mhm.
Just go to our proposed compromise, which is legislatively mandating the creation of a cannabis social equity working group. Required to report back to legislature January 2024. The report will provide recommendations related to the amount of money that's
Are we
appropriated.
in 20?
Yeah, we are.
I'm sorry, January
Okay,
2025.
okay, no, I could be wrong about these things.
It's okay, I
Okay.
really was wrong about these things. Essentially, how much is appropriate to commit on a yearly basis from the Vermont Cannabis Excise Tax towards marginalized and socially disadvantaged community investment, its administration,
Slow down.
and more. We have suggestions for who the working group seats could be filled by, who some of those seats could be filled by. And we also ask you to permanently make permanent the current one-time appropriation of $500,000 to the fund
Mhm.
and shift its administration to the CCB. And I just want to quickly address what Pepper said yesterday about the CCB and his concerns. And I don't think we always see eye to eye with Pepper about the role of the CCB.
Mhm.
For example, they recommended the one agriculture provision, but none of the others. I don't know why. But in this case, he said that there's a conflict between promoting an industry and regulating the industry. I come from agriculture mostly. The Agency of Agriculture administers numerous grant programs. They administer technical assistance. As a farmer myself, I have benefited from them. It's not appropriate to go to A&R. It's not appropriate to talk to other people about that. Those are the people who know agriculture. Like, to us, there's not a conflict. And we think there's clear precedent in existing agencies for that kind of work to fulfill. And we just are a little,
Yeah.
our private conversations with Pepper have a particularly different flavor in relationship to this than what we've heard before.
Yeah.
So.
And we get that. I want the group to manage this fund to be good at social equity. I don't know that it's the CCB either. And the House feels extremely strongly about not moving it this year, but I told them I feel extremely strongly about moving it next year. Because ACCD doesn't want it and they're not a social equity, informed organization and in their day-to-day work. So I would like this working group to recommend next year where it moves. I think it could be the LAOB. I think it could be,
Vermont.
Vermont. Are you on this list?
We're on, well, this is a seat, we recommend people on seats on a working group that we can be in this summer to.
That rural Vermont would
We
convene?
didn't know that you would convene.
Okay,
And that we include a number of organizations, including the LAOB,
great.
et cetera, that'll be part of that group.
So we're very open to suggestions on where we move it next year. We have to listen to the CCB that they don't. Do think there might be better entities that are very social equity oriented and led by people impacted themselves. So come back to us with a proposal, but I'm really open to this working group. I think it would move the issue.
So the working group is a proposal, because they could propose the
Yes.
group you're talking about.
Exactly. So, but I just see it's like moving the money now and.
Right, then forget about the CCB.
Yeah.
Make it permanent, the funding, so we don't have to come back every year and do
Right,
this,
right.
and make it working.
That would be great.
I wanna go to 16 and 17, because that seems
Yeah.
to be the place we have the most opposition, and we would work against this bill if this section or what talk about a setback they're putting here.
Okay.
So-
You have to understand, one
We're now moving
municipality,
to section
setback.
16 and 17.
Yeah.
One municipality came in one conflict, one producer.
Yeah,
We brought in numerous producers, and we can bring in more
right.
who have faced discrimination
Yeah,
from municipalities when they have the authority to
Right.
create districts for cannabis cultivation.
Right.
But they
How
haven't
we
done
got-
those yet. They haven't created those candidates.
No, they did, and that's how we got to where we
I
are.
know.
In the original legislation, you all
Yeah.
exempted tier one, and last year we got the other tiers backdoor out of it because we
Right.
clearly the municipalities were.
I see, because Ellen could walk in the door any minute, I see this as an area where we should take
Take
it
it.
outside the committee room.
Absolutely.
Get your grower, like, I wanna hear from them and I feel badly that they haven't been heard in the Senate. I don't think they've been to Senate.
They have, they
Agriculture.
went to Senate Ag in February, a number of.
In
Yeah.
February,
Yeah,
okay,
I mean, that's what he said, is they didn't act.
that was.
But at that
But the
time-
citing
At
wasn't.
that time, the citing bill, 540, whatever it was.
a different
It was,
discussion.
it was a discussion.
And this is the thing, we talked about not making it retroactive right now, and still we're talking about this one situation. I still don't like that, the House knows I don't like that. I wanna work on this. To work on this, like. I don't want either direction, the policy to be led by this one situation. I would like that something, some freedom for that situation to be dealt with. They clearly have a lot of ducks too, like, I don't know what's going on there. But I wanna make sure we're fair to the entire state.
Yes.
I'm looking at Nick and Bert again. Are you, like, somebody needs to convene us outside of committee.
We
This is
have
not
to
your
convene you with
circuit.
folks outside
Okay.
of committee, and
Yeah.
I also would just say, if you don't want the one situation to dictate things, then just. Put this in a working group or something, don't put
Yeah,
any
well, that's what
setbacks.
we, that's
But
what we
you-
talked about.
But you talked about putting in setbacks for now. You
No,
said-
we talked
Well,
about
that you heard today, because
And
the
yesterday.
chair got upset that yesterday we said, no change now and come back to us with
I-
the impact.
It's my fault, I suggested some setbacks and an ability for CCB and stakeholders to come
Right.
back and make recommendations. Mike, Mike was thoughtful, and I do wish we'd heard him first, but if you are strongly supporting that, we need to know who, because Pepper didn't wanna be the working group, we
Right.
asked him and stakeholders, but you
And
have a better idea about.
We
that.
have a on the record disagreement, and again, everyone's in a difficult position, we have an on the record disagreement about how much the setbacks would impact other people. So everyone who is in a different place, on or off the record, needs to, we wanna understand the impact. I don't wanna do this unless I understand how it impacts more people than this one guy.
Can I,
Senator Harrison.
for one thing, we're never gonna know how it impacts everyone. There are just too many possibilities. So I just wanna say that, we're never gonna know how
But
it
we have a
impacts.
disagreement
No,
about
No, I understand,
known
I understand.
situations.
But I just wanna be clear that there are always going to be conflicts, so we have to find a
Mhm.
way to manage these conflicts.
Mhm.
And I think at the local level is the place to manage these conflicts. And my concern with kicking the can down the road and not doing anything
Okay.
is that
I don't-
your folks might make big investments in ways that they're gonna have to dial back. So that's.
Ellen, our housing bill is gonna take precedent now, we didn't get to hear about advertising. We will try to fit that in this week. And there's a lot of openness on the committee to having that conversation.
What's the plan in terms of timing, to get this resolved? What's gonna be done in this session? Do you have a deadline at this point?
I mean, it's ideal that we give people a sense of, that we try to vote it out by Friday. This doesn't, this wouldn't be able to have a conference committee.
We'd have to broker
So
agreement
we have a
here.
broker agreement
Can
here.
we take our suggestion? I would say.
Yes,
In agriculture, this kind of thing goes through a rulemaking process.
right,
As the agency, the CCB can conduct a rulemaking process, they
Yeah.
engage with producers around the state, they engage with municipalities around the state, it's public.
you mean the advertising
No,
rulemaking?
no, no, I'm
Oh,
talking about the site,
Oh, okay.
and this whole idea of like, what scale appropriate regulations.
Is there anything you wanted to
citing
say about
events there.
advertising before you're out of the witness chair?
I would say that it's important, but I just want to stress though, we appreciate you prioritizing these issues at least as of this moment.
Okay.
They have
Okay.
greater ramifications on the
Right.
issue than immediately.
Right,
Yes.
you don't wanna go backwards right now,
Precisely.
having come in to try and,
And if I may, just 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Important for this committee to hear, outside of, these revenue figures that are significant, that are coming out of the market. I would point in part on the members here that, beneath those numbers, it is a very challenging time for our small producers in this new regulated market. Many of them are struggling with expenses, whether it's banking fees that are way more than our banking.
There was good news on this.
It's short, yep, and
let's just let
I'm
her,
happy to speak to that.
Yeah.
Speak to that. But it's really important, I think, for all of us to consider that, though the market is performing, it is not, and it's not doom and gloom, but we do have a significant portion of the market that is either underwater or they're having trouble selling product. It's a very difficult time right now. And so we're trying to prevent any sort of further burden on these individuals as they're trying to survive.
That makes sense.
Happy to speak more about that as well.
Yeah, like Rue Magali, come schedule with us. If the good news is we'll have a little more, I don't even know if I should say this, but we'll have a little more downtime in between
Certainly,
things once we get this housing bill done to
certainly,
today.
makes sense.
To have conversations and I within certainly, our constraints of building a forum, we want to feel accessible to folks. We want to have this conversation and not let the time constraint get in the way of supporting small businesses.
So we'll be in touch about a producer conversation with Senate Ag and about a conversation about setbacks or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all, appreciate it. Thank you for
Thanks.
having
Ellen, relatively on time and looking not so flustered. Great. So we're gonna switch gears to housing that Majali's working on. Jill, we'll have to reschedule or talk.
I'd like to get just a few minutes of the 15.
You will at some point, but we didn't even talk about advertising today,
Yeah.
so, yeah, fair. So. We're still working on Frank Grant.
Oh, can I ask you something?
Oh,
about
okay.
the draft? I was just waiting.
Yeah.
Easier for me to just write on it, because there's minimal changes. Sure. Okay, print it and write on it. Sure. Cool.
So this is the summary, is this the summary?
There's no summary.
No, it's a copy of on the bottom, you'll find S311 as passed out this
How do
morning.
I?
Then you'll
Yes,
find
you know,
as they say, or
yeah.
exhibit 7 as passed out of natural resources
Go back.
and Ray's amendments.
How many trees have we killed with this? We probably could build a house.
Get ready for the caucus of the whole.
Trees actually get planted.
Alone bad for the environment.
So, yeah, can we all skip the caucus of the house?
Hello, Ellen Takehouse, hi, Ellen in the Legislative Council. So here's why you just got handed a ream of paper. I'm here today on draft 3.1 of the Senator Bray amendment to H 687.
That's the top one.
Yeah.
Which is amending 687 draft 4.1 that the Senate Natural Resources Committee voted out.
Which is the second one.
No, this is 2.1. Just
And-
saying.
Sorry.
Oh, and you have 2.1 also,
Yes.
because I only finished 3.1 this morning.
Okay.
And then also, hold on,
Yeah.
687 combined parts of S311. So I was working very late and I was working this morning and I don't have a summary that easily shows you all of these pieces. And so they are here in front of you if you need to look at any of them
We appreciate that you're
during
here
this
at all.
discussion.
Like, believe.
So yes,
I do want to remind the mining committee, be very gracious to Ellen, like, none of this is her fault. And we need to prioritize Ellen's time to work on helping us with helping the caucus understand tomorrow, so no special requests of Ellen today unless it is changes that we can't live without to the final amendment that's negotiated that Senator Bray and I and whoever else wants to sign on will bring to the floor tomorrow.
So we're gonna have hopefully both committees sign on.
We hope to. Senator Bray's convinced this is like the holy grail of negotiation.
Thank you for your grant.
so you also have draft 2.1 of the Bray amendment because that was what I had finished as of yesterday.
Got it.
And so there are some very small changes in draft 3.1.
But you ever stop making small change?
Unfortunately,
I know,
the Senate
right?
Natural Resources Committee just requested a bunch of changes to 3.1, so I will point them out as we go.
Oh, no.
Okay, that are not in here yet.
We're
Okay.
gonna be.
They're the same couple of topics, but it's the
Okay.
language, so I'll point them out, it's language.
Ellen has the wheel. I'm letting go. And we're not gonna ask anyone to do anything they're comfortable with, but
Oh, really?
A boost.
That wording is.
There's an interesting.
So I think what we are going to do is start with draft 3.1 dated last night, 4:29, 6:37 p.m. You may also have among your documents from last week the summary of what was voted out of Senate now.
We do.
So that is what was voted out of Senate Natural. Last one, right? And
I just want folk to know, when Ellen says what was voted out of Senate Natural, they've only taken one formal vote. And that was on their SNRE amendment last week that went to finance. And these other two pieces are currently operating informally, so we can respond to them and have a final joint amendment. So we won't have 7 more drafts and amendments. This is our turn to respond to this for a final amendment that people can sign on to. I know I am.
yes. And also
Here it's from 418. That's the last one we have, I believe. It's the last one we got.
Magali, would you mind?
Yeah, make me a copy.
This, it says
Yeah.
17 April.
Is that the right one?
I might have, yes, that is.
That's this one.
I have some extra paper in
Another
there.
call of the,
Yeah, I think so. I
The
can't.
4. Thank you.
So it reflects the bill that Senate Natural Resources and Energy passed out on April 17th of 503.
Yes.
And that is the
The last official vote that was taken.
That's the last, and I'm just trying to follow the art. That's the last official vote by the committee, although what you see as Gray's amendments have been committee supported.
Yeah.
This is committee work that all of them have done. This is not just Gray,
Yes,
right? Is that fair?
yes.
Right.
And it is, what we'll look at today is actually in response to what Senator Rob Hinsdale had brought forward, whatever day.
April 24th, which
Maybe that, yes, that day.
this one.
Right, which we never got to see
Which-
Ellen again after that, so
First one.
we never got to work on, and they voted in and started working on it. I do apologize to folks who've been working with a very inelegant process.
I have never seen one like that.
That's why we're having a caucus of the whole tomorrow.
I'm so
I
pleased
just
we're
thought
doing
that
that.
finance would have passed it out if it saw all the amendments.
Well, appropriations feels the same way, so we're doing our best, and we're talking to Secretary Bloomer, and people can be okay with the finance pieces and not be okay with the overall bill, but we're trying to get everyone okay with the overall bill, and we're hearing people's feedback, and I think you'll see some responses to that feedback in the latest draft from Senator Gray's committee, so let's let Ellen go through those.
Sure, and so draft 3.1 dated 4/29. I did attempt to leave as much highlighting in as possible to show where things have changed. And so the highlighting that's in there is actually not necessarily just from today's draft, it's cumulative. So
Great.
it's just so, but at the same time, it doesn't show every single thing. Because one of the main changes they did make is to take the appeals of Act 250 permits. They have taken this out of this bill, so they are staying with the court, and so that removed a number of sections.
Wow.
And making it a study.
And
thought it was a
making
study.
it a study, okay.
We proposed a study
Yes,
to make a brief.
if the statutory changes moving the appeals from the court to the board are removed in this amendment.
So the appeals have been taken out and we're back to status quo on appeals with a study on how to do them and where it's appropriate.
Yes. Do you wanna go to page 16 or do you wanna put your?
Where do you want us?
Well, maybe we'll just start with section 1, and cause it's. The things before that are small. So
Yes.
first, they did add a couple of words to the purpose section referencing housing.
Which was helpful.
So the purposes are, protecting and conserve the environment while supporting equitable access to infrastructure, including housing.
We're off to a good start.
Yes.
Alright.
We really
I
have.
know, no,
stay
no,
on
no,
schedule.
I'm gonna do my question later.
Circle
Okay, write them
things,
down.
we're staying on
Okay,
schedule,
turn
no
the pages down.
question, no, nothing but clarifying questions right now.
So as I did just mention, all references to the board hearing the appeals have been struck. And so, on page 8, section 4, the reference to the board adopting rules for appeals has been struck. And in section 5, adding to the list of their powers hearing appeals, that has been struck.
And I do wanna note, because we noted this for appropriations, that the professionalization of the board has been met with agreement so far overall. And that's why in finance and appropriations, we added $400,000 for the NRV to do their professionalization work in January of next year. So that the sequencing, I think, is more fair to their new board.
We did that through the doubling of the property transfer tax on second homes.
Okay.
Right,
That's how we raised the money.
okay, so, sorry, I just clarifying question.
Yes.
I don't see this, you've just taken it out, you haven't struck it or like lines through, it's just not here.
Correct.
Great, okay. Just want to clarify, because sometimes we see things struck, okay.
Well, just as a reminder, Senate appropriations voted the bill out last night. It is on notice for tomorrow, and in theory will be up on the floor tomorrow, and so the time to produce a full amendment is now. And so leaving extraneous marks,
Right.
just,
Nope,
And we're
Okay.
doing what
Yes.
makes sense to Ellen in her personal and professional capacities right now. I'll leave it at that.
okay, because any amendment needs to be in the calendar within the next 6 hours-ish,
Right.
so,
Over second reading.
correct.
Yes, and we are trying to get our final negotiated amendment up for second reading, so we're not asking people to take a vote on
I
something
know.
that is unclear.
good idea.
So next, on page 15, section 9, there is, you cannot see, but the fees for Act 250 appeals has been struck. So that is why that is highlighted. And then, on page 16, I will say, section 10, just for your information, last night in Senate Appropriations, they did make a change to section 10. It will be reflected in this when I update it. But they have removed one of the staff attorneys and therefore reduced the funding in this section.
And that's because we lost $2 million with our important Senate Finance amendment to make the property transfer tax on second homes more workable and fair. And so Senate Appropriations had to find about $2 million to cut, and they cut $60,000 from an attorney. And I understand from the NRV, they're just happy to get money for attorney capacity at all. The original proposal for the 2 attorneys was to help hear new appeals, but they are happy with all the other responsibilities they have to be able to fund more attorney capacity for this.
So it's at 2, it was 3 previously.
No, this is not
So will it go to
the
1?
appropriations amendment to that.
Okay.
So the professionalization of the NRV is going forward, but with only one additional attorney. Is that summary of that, just of that
Yes.
discussion? And it's going ahead on the same time frame or slightly 6 months later?
This is FY 25, so it's coming to them in the same fiscal year as the professionalization. Beyond that,
But with one attorney, okay, great. Okay,
So the next piece of highlighting is section 11A, which is this appeals study.
so what, page 11A, 16, yes, we have all this.
So the Natural Resources Committee did just make some tweaks to this language, not different, but just they've added some additional people. Do you want me to read through it?
I'm okay if you don't. I was actually going back, sorry, to
Oh, no,
find
no.
out where we changed the name to the LURB. Because the NRB actually pointed, I know I just hate the name and I'm biased, but the NRB actually pointed out that it would cost them money to change their website, to change their branding, to change their forms. And we don't have that money for them, and that takes time.
Oh, so
Away
we're
from more
going up
important
because of
things.
money?
Well, I find that salient on top of, I don't think we should rename a board right now
Until we.
on top of all the confusing
I
things we're
totally
doing.
agree. It's
Yeah.
basically the existing board, but being expanded.
And appropriations didn't make
So-
change,
Yeah.
so
So is there?
Just
well,
leave
there
it
is on
natural
page one, right?
Um,
There's the land use board.
I'm gonna ask Ellen for our final negotiated amendment, unless there's disagreement, that we
Could we get rid of
strike
LURB?
whatever language made them into the land use review board and let them.
Just put the
determine
board
it.
and take out word.
So that may happen down the line. But at the moment, the proposal to keep so that we don't spend more money is
Yes.
to keep it natural resources.
Yes.
So
Okay.
this is the amendment from the Senate Natural Resources Committee, so
Mm.
your draft already has that.
It has that change back to not LURB,
To save
okay.
the NRB money.
So
I'm
if
writing
you'd like
down
to
all
hear
of-
the arguments in favor of changing the name to the LURB, I'd be happy to make them to you.
Yes, and
I'm not against the change of the name, but if they have to spend money, they don't have,
Yeah.
I'm like.
But let's focus on other things
yes,
now.
yes.
Good idea.
Section 2 establishes the word, still.
That's because this is the.
This is
Bray
the
amendment.
natural,
The
yeah.
Bray
Bray.
amendment. Yeah.
So are we gonna see our committee amendment?
Amendment.
We're gonna
usually
do our
come in
best for
one
people to see that by this
page, and
afternoon,
they're-
and that means we have to finish.
The amendments, I've never had a bill where the amendments are the entire bill.
We don't have time for how messy this is, we just have time to clean it
Right, so can we just say this is the updated bill or the amended bill?
up. These 2.1 and 3.1 will not see the floor. They
We're gonna
will be
blend them.
discussed with Senate Natural Resources, and a final amendment will be produced
Okay,
that people can live with or not.
but this is a bill.
It's just not going to the floor, it's their response to
No,
us.
no, I understand, but,
Yeah.
but an amendment often is like, this is my amendment.
It's a
one
strike.
page.
No, we are doing a strike off.
This is a strike.
By the end.
Right,
It
right,
won't come
right,
as-
so,
We need to move on, folks.
yeah, but this is the bill.
This
A
is the bill, this is
Yeah,
the
The
bill.
amendment
that's
is
what
a
you were
reason
saying.
Yes.
it's a strike
This-
off.
Moving on.
Yes.
This is the
Yeah.
strike.
Yeah.
It's actually not a strike all, but
It's a strike most from the relevant sections, they
Alright.
left alone.
because you're not actually changing most of the sections, but
So there's a lot we are not seeing in this. Is that what you're saying?
This is the new.
we just have to
Okay,
focus.
okay,
I will
okay,
explain it
okay.
to you later if you'd like.
Perfect.
Yeah, it'll probably take an hour.
Yeah.
To explain everything that is happening.
Which we're trying to do by the company as a whole, but
So,
let me move on, we really.
These sections that I have written are in this amendment in 126 pages.
Who's doing the concept?
So
We all are.
The concept
I-
the whole, it's a really great question.
Who's doing the presentation?
Keisha and
hopefully myself and Senator Bray and Ellen.
Oh, I don't think.
yeah.
I mean, Ellen will be present. Folks, we're gonna
I
stay
think
through
that
lunch, so I just wanna make sure everyone knows
I
that.
have to go to money chair.
You are
so I
staying
will
through
be
lunch.
there. Senator Bray's presentation, it put and it's on here.
I know, we're going to stay through lunch,
But
if we aren't finished with Ellen, please, folks,
So
if I can't lose a quorum through lunch.
Yeah.
Can't stay for much.
Okay, so I've lost two members, so Sen,
I fight 12:30.
Okay. Okay, then let us move on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like,
No,
really,
it's fine,
guys,
it's fine, it's fine.
we don't have
This is our
time for
priority.
this. So no more extraneous conversation, we're talking only about clarifying questions.
We're
from
listening,
Ellen.
we're listening to Ellen.
Yeah, so just now in their conversations, they did add they added 4 additional people to the stakeholder group and required that the meetings be publicly warned.
Which page are we on now?
I'm still on page 16.
Oh, okay.
I'm not reading through the language,
Yeah.
but they did just make some changes in committee that are not reflected on the page that I will write, I guess, at some point.
So you're adding the members.
Yes.
How many?
4.
Okay. Great.
Okay,
New members to what?
the appeals stakeholder group.
Studying appeals.
Study.
So on page 24 and 25, the section 17 and 17A are on accessory on-farm businesses, and they made some slight tweaks to this language, which are fairly small considering. So on page 24, previously, one of the allowed things was baked goods sold, baked within the state. Now they've struck the within the state, so that's just baked goods to avoid constitutional concern. And on page 25, they modified the definition of qualifying products so that it means a product that is one of the following. And then they did add the exemption from Act 250 for the accessory on-farm businesses.
Oh, it categorically, they are now exempt.
Not categorically, it is all the language in page 17, in section 17A.
Okay.
Which is, I can't summarize
Yeah.
quickly.
Okay.
On page 31, the State Natural Resources Conservation Council has been added as a stakeholder to the Tier 3 rulemaking group. And then the majority of the changes that I think you'll be interested in are in sections starting with 23 and then the other housing exemption. I don't know if you want to pause there and then do the other smaller things first.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, so let's jump then to page 51. So, page 51, I believe you have had some conversations about this. I don't know if you've had any testimony, but the Jennifer Byrne, as a representative of the Environmental Justice Council, and ANR had recommended that the dates for the environmental justice policy be pushed out 2 additional years. And this because it took them more than a year to get set up and to start having their meetings. And so they are behind in the development of the environmental justice process. And so they've requested an extension of the relevant dates in the statute. And so that is reflected in sections 39, 40, 41, 42. And so additionally, on page 54 in section 41, there's currently in the statute regarding the environmental justice groups, the advisory council, and interagency council, that they be required to meet not more than 8 times per year. And so there was a request also to give them additional meeting time because they are behind in developing policy. So the committee didn't want to leave it fully open-ended, and so they landed on 12 meetings per year, which would give them at least 1 meeting, about 1 meeting. The next change is on page 56. I don't think your committee has heard about this because this really is kind of this is an environmental issue that has come up in the last year or so. Last year, there was an environmental court decision that denied a party the ability to file an amicus brief. And it was a very technical decision. And so the proponents who want to be able to file amicus briefs in Act 250 and agency cases have requested this language, so it allows the judge to have the option to allow filing of amicus briefs in those cases.
I'm just asking the pro temp office to make sure that Senator Sears sees that, because he's been feeling kind of, this is a lot about courts and.
I also raised that this morning.
Okay, great. Ashley is our doer of that, so.
It was an issue that was raised last session as well, but it never got worked on. Okay, that might be Oh, there are a couple of small-ish changes
Refer to.
in the municipal section. So on page 86,
Hey, we're cruising along here.
well, that's because we have to go back.
to.
We have to go back, but yeah.
Yeah.
But there's
86.
only a couple small changes in the municipal zoning section. So on page 86, in regards to quadplexing, your committee had inserted some language that allowed for 1/3 of an acre for quadplexes. There was testimony about this from some of the developers, and then so there was proposed language and then the RPC's recommended language. So this is, I think, some simple language on page 86. So in any district served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure, multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be permitted use permitted on the same size lot as a single family dwelling.
Oh, that is
And
simple.
they're not striking the last clause. They were considering striking that last clause at the bottom of page 86, and they are not striking it, so I could unstrike that.
Okay.
But yes, it is just making it, I think it is really a clarification of what you passed.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, that's good.
Great job,
because-
everyone.
One of my towns was very confused about that, so I'm gonna just
Yeah,
see what.
we hadn't landed the plane on that, I think.
All right, so
I think that's elegant and simple.
Great.
So on page 88, so on a slightly different topic, section 53 is the section that puts, so on motels and hotels permanently converted to affordable housing, you had that language. And so this is for a limitation on what aspects of those developments that a municipality can regulate. And so the Senate Natural Resources requested this second sentence that's being added on line 17. And so they did actually just make a slight modification to it. So each permanently affordable housing unit converted pursuant to this subdivision shall be equipped with facilities for sleeping, food preparation and sanitation, and meet any other building codes and local minimum housing standards.
Okay, well, I will just flag, I have a concern about this whole section. A permanently affordable housing unit might be the key to agreement. Because that might be different than some kind of care facility or transitional space, but single room occupancy has been seen as a cost-effective path forward for skilled we might have people who aren't taking care of their own food preparation, or that could cause a fire, and so they have shared kitchens.
It
I don't
says
think that's-
facilities, yeah, I don't think it
That's-
says, it says facilities for food preparation, and sanitation.
It doesn't.
I think you could have a communal kitchen.
I think that I'd like to, Ellen is saying their intent is to say each unit has it.
I would keep it the way it is, because that allows for the flexibility you're talking about.
It doesn't.
It does, it says facilities for, they could be shared facilities.
Each unit have to be
Okay, we
equipped.
can do that, but
It doesn't,
I look at the motel by me.
Yeah,
oh, I see.
There's no place to prepare food unless you
right,
buy a microwave. You've got the bathroom sink or the tub
yes.
for a water source. There's,
We don't wanna leave the
yeah, I
motels
don't,
alone,
yeah, I don't think we
but
want
they might do,
to continue that and just have a motel while it's now permanently affordable housing.
that's not
And-
gonna happen.
yeah.
These are, with the permanently affordable housing, are our housing partners. I don't know if Charlie wants to speak to this, nobody's really here for
So,
that group.
That may be what it is now, but
Reading
that
language, and the language says each.
each.
Yes,
it
yeah,
don't-
you can
it
get
is
rid of each
So,
unit.
yeah, cause they could say, we're creating a huge shared kitchen, state of the art, like,
We could make this more flexible.
yeah.
Get rid
I'd
of
like to
each
be
unit.
flexible here.
We could do that.
Mhm.
I don't think, but I also think that you wanna be able to be flexible and have it be able to work
Yes.
both ways. So
Exactly.
you want it to be able to be flexible and go back to being maybe six, so I think
Yeah.
let's work on this, but I think this is a.
Okay, I think you're using, this is called housing. This is not called a care facility. It's not it's called housing. And we
Yeah.
went through the legal definitions of habitable housing and finance.
Mhm.
And you've gotta have bathroom, you should have a sink that's not in the bathroom for food preparation.
Most hotels and motels have bathrooms in there,
Yes.
but if they all had to put a kitchen in, so food
I
prep to me is
thought-
different than
I
a
thought you're
kitchen.
going,
We might be making it so that we can't do any of it.
They actually, we did do that in Brattleboro where we changed hotel motel into a
Mhm.
permanently affordable housing and they did have kitchens in each unit. But I'm not saying that's necessarily the case. We also have
It's not gonna be practical.
single occupancy,
Yeah,
but those, I don't know. I mean, it might be practical. There's different.
so I hope people are okay with me working with Ellen to make sure food preparation could just mean you have a microwave and a sink. Great, you know, but if you build a shared kitchen, that might be the only way a motel turns into permanently affordable housing for certain populations.
But maybe you could do both and make it really flexible so that it could go either
Yes,
way.
I want the flexibility because our affordable housing partners wanna give people the best quality of life they can while actually making these conversions.
if you're talking about a shared kitchen where somebody is cooking meals for everyone, if you're talking about a shared kitchen where 14 different family, some kind of groups are cooking and working in there and you don't have anybody in charge, you're setting this thing up for failure.
There's also, I think, concern with having stoves in every room in certain types of housing units. So, and that would be probably cost prohibitive for a lot of these projects. So I think our housing
Maybe they
partners
aren't-
know what
they
they're
aren't
doing.
Well,
Candidates
wanna-
for housing.
assume that this would all just be the partners, but I would
It's
hope that.
permanently affordable housing.
Well, there could be other people who do permanently affordable housing. It doesn't have to be just the land trust, but the building
Not the land
codes
Yeah.
should, or the housing trust.
Why can't we make both instead of either or? Why can't we?
Well, the
allow
building
both?
code should already require
Yes,
that.
if you take this out and you say, you don't have to have food preparation, you don't have to.
Yeah.
What you're basically saying is, we're just gonna continue the motel program, only we're gonna call it affordable housing.
I'll talk to the housing partners and just make sure they have the flexibility to do food preparation in a way that doesn't completely wipe this program out from creating more permanently affordable housing.
If I can't cook my own meals, that's not housing.
So I would suggest we add
Mhm.
something about more flexible housing and allow for that as well. I think that, I don't think it has to be either or. I would keep this as it is and I would add a section about
Yeah,
permanently affordable housing with flexibility,
With community
without,
Okay.
with community.
so
service.
VHFA is telling me that they're okay with it. I wish they were in the room, because that probably would take out some of the conversation.
But, yeah,
So
so I
we could be okay with it.
I think we can be okay with
Okay.
this and or we could add a sentence to allow for exactly.
So,
what you're
well,
talking
if VHCB and CHT are okay, we're okay.
Good.
Let's move on.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, so on the next page, page 89, in the parking bylaws section, they have removed subsection, what was subsection B, which was, towns shall allow tandem parking spaces to count.
They have removed the tandem parking. Right. Oh, Jesus. I was hoping we were winning that discussion. Oh, well.
They can still allow it,
It's still-
just,
yes.
we're not requiring. it to
So are
allow it.
people okay letting
I'm fine
that
with
go?
that,
Yes,
because
not the hill I'm
It's
gonna
a,
go.
There are other hills.
You don't wanna alienate the towns,
right,
and you need them as partners.
Okay.
And, you can allow candid parking, but if you've got 4 strangers and you're doing.
oh, no,
that-
So we're, yeah, so we're clear,
The
we're
police
letting
not
that
getting
go.
called.
What page is that?
So I do just wanna flag, it's not in here, but they. In S311. Section 16 was striking the ability of residents to vote on bylaw changes.
Yes.
As opposed to having the legislative body approve them, and that they are not including that in their language. They've struck that.
So we would have to look at
Still
our original.
relieves the ability for a municipality's legislative body to give the voters ability to vote on any bylaw changes.
Which is fair.
Okay, well, you had struck it.
Yeah.
You had struck it,
Because, I mean,
so.
I'm looking at Katie a little bit or Charlie because this is where like things slow down quite a bit when you
Have to vote on
appoint or
bylaw.
elect people to make these decisions and then you still make them take a vote. I just wanna say it's a big deal to take this out when we're trying to limit all the ways that people can appeal. And we had some situation where people then appealed after a vote.
Oh,
and I
I'm
just-
now recalling this conversation. It's been a while,
Yeah.
sorry. So this is,
It's not worth. reading.
Well, and some of these decisions are really big decisions that the community really should vote on. I'm
Okay, so it sounds like we're gonna let this one go to.
for this year, but
Ribbit.
let's,
Charlie, do you face?
I have personal, sorry, Charlie Baker on behalf of the RPCs. I certainly have personal opinions, but it's not here, not a hill I was gonna die on. I think if this becomes an issue where it's bumper sticker politics is what happens, right? Like, it's just, people aren't really understanding the issues, and so they vote on
Don't
some
destroy
bumper
our
stickers, right?
this or whatever,
And
yeah.
so-
that could happen.
Yeah,
Then
so I
it also
think let's
can
address
be-
it when it comes, if it
Oh.
becomes an issue, right? So.
Right. So,
so wait until we have an issue that we have to resolve as opposed to resolving it ahead of time so we don't have an issue.
it's a mild problem right now
Right.
because it creates uninformed, like, you know,
Right,
yes on this, no on this.
So let's inform people better, rather than get rid of the.
I love how optimistic you are.
It's in Alvin's office, or
Okay.
the finance
Okay.
office, but I've been called.
So it sounds like we're letting this one go. If we're not disagreeing on that, then we need to move on.
No,
so
agreeing with.
Did ADUs by right stay?
it has to stay.
Okay.
We passed that into law
There's-
ages ago.
Yes, there's no changes.
I just wanted, because there was something about 2027 in one draft and it's gone.
So we have to be very clear about, we're gonna talk about that.
Oh, we are? Okay,
Yes.
great.
There are no changes to the municipal law regarding accessory dwelling units.
Okay.
They are still by right under municipal law.
We wanted it under Act 250, but we're coming back to that.
That's what,
Okay.
so, the only others, I think one of the only other changes not related to the Act 250 housing exemptions is that you had included language in section 18.
Well, wait a minute, sorry.
Going
Are we
back
done
to
with this?
page 17, 18.
Sorry.
I just moved on from it because we weren't disagreeing.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if that was only
so-
page
So I
90.
just said, one of the only changes left.
It's on page 18.
No,
section.
no, sorry,
I'm
listen to
dyslexic.
listen to all of the words I'm
All the
saying,
words.
please. That is not highlighted is another section that was struck that was in this part of the bill.
Okay.
In your section, in your S 311. So it is not here for you to look at. If you'd like to look at it in the S 311 draft that you've been pointed out, handed out, it is on page 18 and it is. You included language to limit who and when permits for housing developments and municipal permits can be appealed.
Right.
The Senate Natural Resources Committee removed all of this language.
Yeah.
And I am still doing research on this, but the Vermont Constitution guarantees a right to appeal an injury against you. And so this language that you had included, I have concerns about it being unconstitutional for a couple different reasons. It potentially could, I don't have a final answer on whether or not it is unconstitutional, but this limit on appeal was for either an opponent or the applicant themselves, so neither would be able to appeal. So that is a problem. And then you were limiting it to different types of housing projects, and so anyways, I think there is concerns, the House or the Senate committee didn't feel like they had time to figure out how to make it constitutional, so they struck it.
This was our percents of population.
Yeah, that's still in there.
That's still
This
there.
was, you can't
On
feel
page 18,
projects in certain areas of
I'm on.
Route 5. have
subsection
some
D.
money.
Right?
Okay,
Yeah.
This is where our Montpeliers and others came in and said, these are the kinds of projects that we lose because we wanna do 16 units in our
Right.
dense areas and the neighbor opposes it and it turns into a duplex or a single family home. So I liked this language a lot, but, you know,
That's solely section 19.
Section, it's
I think it's
actually
part eight.
page
Yeah,
18,
On,
number
this is on,
D,
this
line
is an S
5.
311,
yes.
Line 5.
section 19,
No, it
No.
was section 18.
section 18.
It's line 5, number D, and letter D.
Okay, got
Yes,
it.
and they left the other part of section 18 about the percentage
Mhm,
and who can appeal the minimum number. They did leave that,
mhm,
but they struck this language about the limitation on
right.
appeals.
This also felt like some Putney kind of stuff to me to just try and get rid of a layer of appeal when the town's made.
right, but the 3% helps a lot.
Yeah,
That definitely helps Putney's situation.
so where are people at?
Well, if it's unconstitutional,
If we don't know its constitutionality, yes, we should probably make peace with this one. I don't know if others have made peace yet, so I want to give people the opportunity.
So there's always next year. After we have established between Peter and Ellen, if it's constitutional or not.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear if any other lawyer has worked on this issue.
I'm sure you'll get
because
100 opinions.
I think we did that before.
Well, I'm happy
And they didn't
because
answer,
I
yeah.
spent an hour last night trying to cobble together an
Aw.
analysis and I gave up.
Thank you for trying, Alex.
Yes.
I feel like that's
So
me, so thank you.
I did after 6:37 PM last night, that's what I did
Oh my gosh.
before I went home. So, okay, so the rest of this section of H687 that you did that you looked at are intact. So that includes the designated area update, and the rest of the municipal changes. They have not made any other changes. The only other changes are on the Act 250 housing exemption.
Right, and we have that conversation back and forth about, and the exemptions might include this, the transit corridor.
Yes.
Is that in the exemptions piece?
Yes.
Okay, let's
And there is a
let's
definition.
go.
Let's look at that. Now, are we going back to the?
Now we're
gray
going
and-
back, yes, so back to page 33.
Okay.
So first, well, I guess 32. So first in section 22, you will recall that this is striking last year's sunset provision on 25 or more units or up to 25 units constructed in a downtown neighborhood development area, village center. And that is because larger exemptions are being added. So this is being struck and there are larger exemptions being added in the following sections.
Right.
Next, in section 23, up until July 1, 2027, priority housing projects have no cap if located within the designated downtown, neighborhood development area, or growth center, or within 1/2 mile around such designated center. So it is expanding on last year's exemption with an additional 1/2 mile around those areas. And then I have been slightly concerned that this is unclear, and so some additional language is added that's highlighted.
Right.
So for purposes of this subdivision, in order for a parcel to qualify for the exemption, at least 51% of the parcel shall be located within 1/2 mile of the designated center boundary. If the 1/2 mile around the designated center extends into an adjacent municipality, the legislative body of the adjacent municipality may inform the board that it does not want the exemption to extend into that area.
That's a good change.
Good catch.
So
Yeah.
what you're doing here is actually a little bit complicated because designated areas are mapped areas that follow parcel boundaries. But by drawing a radius, you are cutting through various sizes of parcels.
Right.
And so figuring without clarity, there is going to be litigation. And so just want to raise that.
Right.
And it's not because, I know that you talk a lot about litigation being weaponized and detrimental, but litigation at its core occurs when there's a legitimate disagreement.
Right.
Or any disagreement between
Yeah.
what the words on the page say and what people think they mean, and figuring out that gray area. And so even this, I mean, this is allowing a couple different things. It's, you're gonna have to figure out if 51% of the parcel is within the area. And then also, these boundaries will extend into other municipalities.
Possibly, yeah.
But, well, I think that there has been.
You identified something.
Yes, and so then that becomes a question of, well, what if the town does not want that because they have not sought to have this kind of designation in the past,
So with this committee's blessing, I was gonna ask for one change to this language. Which is that in the geographic area identified in and around designated downtowns, that the exemption be for all housing. We are talking about areas where projects are routinely over 75 units and are already in fully infrastructured and paved areas.
This is not tier one.
where is, so we're gonna
Getting to
get to
that?
that in a minute. So
Then
this
don't let-
section here is the unlimited cap on priority housing projects.
Okay.
Yes, there is more to discuss in this
Okay.
section.
Okay, so, but I also just want to clarify, this is the first time we see the half mile. I assume that we get to the quarter mile one somewhere further
In
down.
Village
Okay.
Center.
This is a great ad, thank you.
Thank you for.
On
I
the
hope
lawyer
that
too,
it's
yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
I do, I just,
No, it
you
is.
know,
It's good.
Oh, hi, Peter.
Much clearer than what we would have thought of.
Well, that's why you're paid the big bucks, Ellen.
So, next, the next, section 24 is the JO requirement for the section I just read you. And it's adding the new interim exemptions for the rest of the housing that we will talk about. So, BB, CC, and DD are on the next, couple of pages, so we will get to them. And then I do just want to flag that the committee just now did vote to strike out the sections, lines 16 through 20, and so we can talk about them.
One page,
So I'm on page 33,
still.
and so we can talk about it if you'd like, but they did just get rid of them.
So they just struck out within 30 days?
I think that's the only thing that allows me to support this section.
So,
Alright, so on
Yeah.
page 33, line 16, the highlighted language.
yeah,
So notwithstanding any other provisional law to the contrary, jurisdictional opinions required in this section shall only be appealed to the Natural Resources Board. Within 30 days of the appeal being filed with the board shall issue a decision on the appeal. The board may adopt rules of procedure for these appeals. So
that's
This-
good.
brings back the question of constitutionality of whether or not you can limit an appeal to only well, this isn't even a quasi judicial board, this is an administrative board at this moment. So first, this language potentially would have needed to be altered because I need to do more research on this about whether, I think the Supreme Court does currently have the authority to hear appeals of jurisdictional opinions. So I probably would have needed to amend that statute additionally to accomplish preventing any appeals from going to the Supreme Court. But currently, the board does not hear appeals. They are not a quasi judicial board. They are currently basically a group of volunteers who meet for per diems. So they haven't held a hearing in I don't know when. So they currently don't have any procedures in place to do this. So they would need to adopt procedures before they could even do this.
When we make them a quote unquote professionalized board, do we also make them quasi judicial?
No.
Or we remove that with the appeals?
You did.
Okay.
So there's a practical issue there, because I think you would need to consider if you then want to, I mean, this language had built in a 30-day
Mhm.
appeal window,
So we can get rid of the first sentence, but not the rest, if we wanted to. You don't think the 30-day window is legal?
well, I think it could be legal, I'm just not
You're-
sure,
you're
I'm concerned,
Sort of limiting appeals.
Right.
so I have both a constitutional concern and a practical concern.
Yes.
And so I will just say that the NRB only previewed this language briefly on Friday, and so I haven't actually seen them or heard from them on how they feel about this. But last week they did say that there previously was a statute that allowed them to hear reconsideration of jurisdictional opinions, and that statute was repealed, and so they have some concern about whether or not they even have authority to hear appeals or reconsideration of jurisdictional opinions. And so this is a session law provision, and so so it's a little bit complicated. These 3 sentences were doing a lot of work.
But then we don't have to require JOs for certain exemptions here.
Could we add this to the study of appeals?
We can
In
add
fact,
to whatever study.
It is
That's
added to
great.
the study of appeals. So
Hey, baby, I'm just channeling.
But we don't have to have the JOs apply to all of these exemptions. In fact, originally, the proposal was for it to only apply to PHPs because Senator Gray understood that they need those for their financing. So JOs could be optional for developers who want that certainty, but we don't have to require them.
The original was not to require them at all,
Right.
because they are always optional.
Right, of course, well, for many of the affordable housing folks, they are required.
Right, but required by the bank, so the
Yeah.
affordable housing folks could get one if they want one.
You like a question?
Peter, that's.
Peter. Oh, Peter, okay, I'm sorry, I was like, who, what Peter, sorry, yeah, and I was talking to Sabina to see where she is, yeah.
Peter Tucker, Vermont Association of Realtors. One way to accomplish what this committee's goal was would be to remove DD from the highlighted, I've got it on line 13 of
Okay,
2.1. Because
we need to know what DD.
you'll get that on the next page, maybe
Yeah.
just let know what's going on.
Okay,
Yeah.
so well, let's hear the rest and then decide how we feel about JOs. Or we can see it.
Reference on line 12.
No, I just don't see it any next. Okay. The ABC and P, but not double.
so sorry, just to have a heads up, I am being called to another committee at 11:30.
Okay,
But we only have 2 pages left,
great.
so I think that should be fine.
Yeah.
So, so on the next changes on page 43.
That's where DD and all the things.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this is the section on interim exemptions. So you will see first at the top of page 43, AA, so no permanent amendment for
Right.
hotel motel permanently converted.
So what I should say, actually, now that I'm looking at it, is I don't think we ever agreed with 2027. We always had it at 2029 because we think the idea that this is done by 2027 is way too rosy and.
Yeah, it was,
Our interim was always 2029.
it was a 3-year period and then. It was a 3-year period for them to start construction and then an additional 3 years at the end of that period for them to finish.
Well, that was last year's exemption.
Right, that's what I
This
thought.
year, what we passed is these exemptions apply till 2029.
Okay, so is that what we're changing here on page 43?
Anywhere we see 2027 for the most part as it relates to exemptions, we would be asking for this to say 2029.
But if the maps and everything are completed before then,
That I'm saying, I don't believe that will be the case, and we can always come back and change it to the affirmative, but we can't,
right,
we have to pick a date.
right, but couldn't we say 2029 or unless the maps or whatever process is complete?
I'm gonna start with 2029, and if there's other language we could use, that's fine, but for the most part, you have to pick a date.
Oh, yeah, I agree we should pick a date, but we don't wanna have a situation where we have exemptions to something that is already in.
Well, but we had to look this year that exemptions would expire, that projects are operating under.
Yeah.
Even if we change things now. So we really want a longer horizon.
Yeah, Okay,
So let's move on,
But
because we only have Ellen till 11:30.
I
So
know.
unless you disagree with 2029.
don't, my question is, I believe the mapping, aren't we still on a trajectory to try and finish the mapping by 26? Charlie Baker being so enthusiastic about this. Is that? in the
That's
bill?
aspirational at this point, because they could come back and say, we're not done.
okay, how about offline, we work to establish a threshold of what being operational means. So it would be 2029 or when this system becomes operational. How about that?
There's appeals and things, though.
Right,
But we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's next?
So, BB is the accessory dwelling unit,
Mm-hmm.
so
Sorry,
this is
DD,
BB.
Mm-hmm.
oh, we're going to, yeah,
Just going down the page.
yep, got it.
So July 1, 2027, no permanent amendment is required for improvements to accessory dwelling units. Units constructed pursuant to the subdivision shall not count toward the units constructed in other projects.
So we had ADUs by right.
Yeah,
Under
I
Act
thought
250.
ADUs were already by right.
So
That was
this,
municipal.
that phrase is actually not helpful and it's being confused here.
Okay,
So by right is sometimes used in terms of zoning.
yes.
Towns cannot prohibit the construction of one accessory dwelling unit per single family dwelling. That is arguably by right, and that is in municipal zoning.
Yes.
What is on page 43 is a full exemption for accessory dwelling units, and they don't even count towards any other project limits until 2027.
That we had wanted to make that a permanent change.
For the purposes of Act 250.
Exactly. That they permanently are not under the auspices of Act 250.
No matter how many there are.
No, there's
No.
only one.
No. She's saying, you're saying there could be more than one.
No,
An ADU by definition.
Well,
is where
let's-
it's one.
No. So there's a definition of accessory dwelling unit that is being added for Act 250 on the next page.
We spent a lot of time on our other definition, so.
Well, it is nearly identical to
Okay.
that.
okay,
Yeah.
on page 45.
On page 45,
Yeah.
so accessory dwelling unit means a distinct unit that is clearly subordinate to a single family dwelling located on an owner occupied lot. Facilities for independent living, including sleeping, food preparation, sanitation, provided there's compliance that the unit does not exceed 30% or 900 square feet. And located within or pertinent to a single family dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
So. That's the definition.
So you're saying that there's otherwise no limit on how many
Correct.
ADUs they can have?
It says
Correct.
a distinct unit, that implies
Yeah.
one.
No, but that's in the definition, but somewhere else it talks about
It
ADUs.
does say that no permanent amendment is required for any accessory dwelling unit, and so it meets that definition. So I do have concern that this could just be used for an
A mobile
unlimited
home.
number of
A
housing unit, well,
Yeah.
housing units, because the distinction between a regular housing unit and a accessory dwelling unit is very minor.
Okay, I would like to make sure we are only talking about one unit, that's why they're called accessory.
Right.
I think it's important to clarify that.
No, I
Agree,
agree.
I know, so how do we do that?
So I think you have a couple of options. What you could do in BB on 43 is, no permanent amendment is required for the construction of, one accessory dwelling unit per single family dwelling.
Okay, it says an accessory dwelling, so it's implied it's one, but that.
I think the part is per
Mhm.
single family
Right. Key.
dwelling,
Okay.
but
Support that.
I haven't,
Thought through it beyond that.
Yeah, cause we
That's-
might
that's
say
a start.
like within 10 years to.
well,
There
and
might be a
so-
time,
right,
but
and
you can figure that out.
I know, so I do think legally that this is a really interesting topic because it came up last year when you're dealing with duplexes.
Mhm.
The distinction you're creating here is sort of very small. And at some point, if there's no, single family zoning required to meet that, need the concept of accessory dwelling unit. And so that leads into this
Yeah.
conversation with Act 250 exceptions.
Mhm.
So this is, the accessory dwelling unit exemption here is intended to be a full, sort of unlimited
Yeah.
number of accessory dwelling units
Bag that idea.
that don't count towards other project totals. So I do think clarifying that it is only one per
Correct.
single family.
I think we
Helpful.
support that.
Okay.
One,
As we flag this for going back to the JOs,
it's
I want the JOs off of all of these types of projects, because that, I mean, for a single family home person to go get a JO after and go all the way to Supreme Court is, they shouldn't be required to get a jurisdiction.
So here's the interesting thing, because I only have 26
Yeah.
minutes. You are having a conversation
Yeah,
at noon?
we're aiming to do it at 12:15, but because they took you this morning and you have to go to another committee.
Yeah.
That could get pushed further and we would stay here
Well-
and we would ask you to come back
Why?
if we don't finish.
Oh, I think we're gonna finish. We're on.
Oh,
there's-
okay.
There's only
Oh,
two more pieces.
but you have to write it.
I have to, but this is, yes, so
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be able to produce anything in the next.
I'm writing down
Okay.
the changes and
Okay.
we'll
Okay.
discuss them without you having to show the language yet.
but I think we've agreed on this one, so we can move to the, whatever is,
Yeah.
you think.
So there's, I guess,
Do we need to further clarify that, in the definition of 45, Ellen?
No, because right now it's saying we'll figure out the permanent exemption later, but until hopefully 2029. These will be exempt. And I'm saying I also don't wanna have a little home have to get a jail.
okay, so next, CC has, you have seen before, that's the conversion of housing, commercial for 29 units or fewer housing. And then DD are the other housing exemptions. So DD 1 until 2027, no
Or,
permit.
wait, sorry, are we 27 or have we asked for 29?
This is the Senate Natural Resources proposal,
Got it, okay.
so I can't
Got it.
make any changes.
And I don't remember what we did, it might have been like 50, but we're living in 29.
So this is until 2027, no permit for 75 units or fewer of housing located entirely within a downtown or 1/2 mile of its boundary. A designated new town center, growth center, or NDA. Housing units constructed pursuant to the subdivision shall not count towards the totals constructed in other areas. This exemption shall not apply to areas within mapped river corridors and floodplains.
Right.
And then the same language that you saw previously about the 51% of the parcel shall be located within the 1/2 mile. And then the municipality is allowed to weigh in and opt out.
Good.
So this is where I, with the blessing of the committee, would be requesting a change. So that all housing in these geographic areas in and around downtowns receive an exemption until 2029. We asked for a lot more than that.
I would really like to see that on a map, because
Oh,
we're
great.
just saying this,
Praise God.
but, oh, good, okay, great.
We had originally asked for that in our first bill, and or we asked for housing to be exempt in the municipality.
But we're not even saying affordable housing, we're saying all housing.
I think I would go back to Senator Cummings' insistence that we say housing that is affordable to all. I mean, if we don't start building housing that isn't permanently affordable, which is very expensive, and we don't have the same amount of money we've had in the past years, then we don't have
I'm seeing,
housing being built. We're not giving these projects money.
I'm seeing gentrification happening, and so I'm concerned.
We did have whole presentations on when the number of housing units go up, rent prices come down.
I understand.
And homelessness comes down.
So if we're gonna add that language, then
Yeah.
add, because I do think it needs an affordable qualifier. I'm happy
Anne's
to-
not here and there's a PHP exemption, which is the expensive housing that we already do,
Right, and
expensive
that's-
for us
Right.
in all of these designated areas. I'm saying in downtowns, this will increase the cost of each unit. We are seeing it all over our downtowns, and there's no reason that the land use is in question in our downtowns of building a large dense project. It would have the effect of reducing density potentially, and that makes each unit cost more.
The designated neighborhood development areas, those can be pretty big areas.
I'm just saying downtown. That's what I'm asking.
So there would be two separate
Yes,
sentences here.
yes.
Oh, sorry.
Designated downtown.
The designated downtown is distinct.
Right, and it's a smaller,
Very dense.
yeah, and it should be.
The area around it too, but that in and around the downtown. No, and I'm trying to make these clear and simple so that some people have the ability to do some housing projects sooner than later.
So.
This could be a private senior housing
Right,
facility.
no,
but all-
I'm just trying to see
Yeah.
where you're making the language change here on 43.
It would have to be a new sentence.
On 43, where? I guess.
Yes.
Just lost.
On 43, instead of saying 75 units or fewer for all of those things, there would be a new sentence either before or after that says the designated downtown and the ring around it, all housing projects would be.
Or you just added a ring around it.
Well, it has already.
It has, all of,
within
yes,
half a month.
Right, but
yeah.
1 minute ago, we were talking about designated downtown, that would be the only place that had.
I just said in and around at the time.
No, the reason we needed a new paragraph, but whatever, I mean, I have become more concerned about gentrification. And very expensive houses being, and condominiums being built in place of affordable housing, and not necessarily, permanently affordable housing, but just
Many-
affordable housing.
Many of these downtowns have inclusionary zoning or can
I doubt
include it.
I don't think so.
And when you reduce the density of a project in our density friendly areas, it costs more.
I'm not saying reduce density, I like density.
We love.
There are big houses being built and renovated for single family that previously actually had multiple families. I'm just finding about, out about this recently, so I just want to be clear that we know what we're doing. So I will like to look at maps if there are maps.
So
A single family home would have always been exempt, but it's about large projects above 75 units.
and exempting all of those projects, whether they're affordable or not, within a designated
Downtown or the ring around it.
or the neighborhood.
Well, so
development.
you're talking about the half mile boundary.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be a pretty big area.
Yeah,
I just wanna understand it, so,
yes,
because it also has impact, the contractors who are doing the work on the fancy homes are not available for the other folks, that is happening. And-
fancy homes, single family homes, we'd get more of those if we didn't do the work we're doing. The work we're doing is to achieve density and allow more
No,
units.
I understand.
We,
I understand.
nothing that, because Act 250 allows less than 9 units everywhere, which we have already concerned ourselves with, that creates
Right.
more single family, expensive.
Especially the
housing.
stuff in tier 2, and we're not talking about tier 2.
We're going to get
I'm
to
worried
that
about tier 2.
conversation. So are you okay with the designated downtown exemption I'm proposing, which achieves density? It doesn't have anything to do with single family home.
I must be dense, because I'm not understanding why the language that currently is here doesn't accomplish that. Is it the 75 units or fewer
75
that's
units.
bothering you?
Yes,
So you want
75 units
no
or fewer in
limits.
downtown.
You
I
want-
think no limit is just, we don't.
That's what we did in all of these designated areas when we passed the bill out.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean
Do you need
that
somebody?
I'm not concerned now.
Hi, good morning.
Well, we were.
Are you coming to tell us that you don't really need Ellen and 15
But we
minutes?
also only have 15
It's
minutes.
not that
to go.
committee,
No,
it's another
We
committee.
were, we were, after Ellen left, there were a couple things under discussion, because we were in council, so we'll finish work after she leaves. But I wanted to know
Yeah.
exactly where we landed.
Okay.
That's great.
I wanted to put it on the table now while you're still
Can
together.
you do that at 11:30 when we lose Ellen? Because we only have Ellen for another 15 minutes.
Do you have anything for you?
Maybe not then, but.
Sometime between 11:30 and noon.
What's that?
So between 11:30 and noon, we only have Ellen for another 15 minutes and we're not gonna be ready.
So that you're not surprised, just in terms of topics.
Yeah.
The language of the appeals study committee,
Right?
it was, you must get a JO versus you shall get a JO.
We said,
Must or shall or must or may or?
right now, it says you shall get it.
Shall or may.
Right.
Shall or
And
shall or
we
may?
Shall or may is
we made it up,
always
we
when it comes
We
to.
backed off to May. You want one?
Great,
Go get.
Good, we
that's
like,
great.
That's good.
The third thing was,
Crosses out.
instead of,
May get it for all of it or just?
it's choose your own adventure.
Okay.
Get one if you want. And then the third thing was 3%. We saw some environmental justice consequences that could be burdensome, 1,200 signatures in Burlington, for instance. So we went back just 25. It's, doesn't leave competing metrics. I mean, it's.
We had already made peace, other strikeout in that section. So,
Anyway, it's 25. so-
Okay, okay. We can have that discussion without Ellen, and we can have some of this discussion without Ellen. So
Yeah.
let's move on to the rest of the language.
Cause Ellen makes wrong with stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, so finally. DD two is for village centers, so on page 44. This is the language that they sent you, and they've added that, that same 50% of the parcel, so.
Right.
In village centers, so no permit or permit amendment for 50 units or fewer of housing. Located on 10 acres or less, located entirely within a village center with permanent zoning or subdivision bylaws, or within 1/4 mile of its boundary. Or areas of a municipality that are within a census designated urbanized area with over 50,000 residents. And within 1/4 mile of a transit route. We're gonna come back to that in a moment.
Yes, because we don't have any urban, or any city with 50,000 residents.
So we will come back to that in
Well,
more
urbanized
section.
areas,
So
there's-
Urbanized area
let's
maybe.
get
yeah, so we'll just talk about it. So an urbanized area is a US Census Bureau definition that actually no longer exists. It was repealed in the last census update, but it previously was a reference to areas with more than 50,000 residents, which is not the city of Burlington, it is the metropolitan area around and including the city of Burlington, so it's 7 towns. So it is a boundary, I can get you that map, Bray has that map on what this area is. And then within a transit route, there is no definition of transit route in statute, so I have added one on page 45. So a transit route means it's a set route or network of routes on which a public transit service, as defined, operates a regular schedule. So these are roads that primarily will have bus service on them.
Yeah, and there's different kinds of bus service. That could actually be a whole conversation that I'm
Well,
not.
I'm happy-
But I'm just saying.
The definition is
Yeah.
right there for you to look at.
Okay,
And
okay.
there's 7 different types of industries that operate that, including the Red Cross.
Okay.
So you can look at that definition.
Uh-oh, this is gonna stretch Wendy.
So-
Transit.
No, I'm psyched to have a definition,
Yeah.
so good.
So, and then just finally add the parcel language again. So,
I'm being dense. Oh, it's there in the non-highlighted language, 50,000 residents.
Yeah.
At some point, I had wanted like for this to parlay into a permanent definition, but at least the bones are there. For that to happen in the future so that it's not just Chittenden County.
well, okay, so it is being added as a permanent definition, but this is a sunset provision. And yes, it is currently only applicable to Chittenden County.
So we can at least look at it in the future and hopefully get more transit corridors than the one.
Well, transit route would be not in Chittenden County.
But it only
it is.
applies in it is.
Right, but at least we have the definition, so I'm
That-
happy about that.
So that is
I
everything.
mean, I
So
made
the
it, I
urbanized
made-
area, 50,000 means Chittenden County.
it means a portion of Chittenden
Portion.
County.
Here, do you want me to give?
It's 15% of our land area where 120,000 people live.
Okay,
But that's with the
It's
transit
existing-
routes, right?
It's the existing settlement. The green shows the transit routes.
so it is a portion of Chittenden County that is designated on a map someplace.
Exactly.
And there's a place that in effect people can look it up, see what it is.
Well, and it is a little bit tricky because this, I mean, I had to look into this and go back to the last census, map from 2010 that still had urbanized areas mapped, because they no longer use that term.
Is it like MTSAs or something?
Well,
Is
so
it
there
that?
are, yes, there are metropolitan statistical areas also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that definition still exist?
Yeah, but that's 3 counties. That's Chittenden, Franklin, Grand Isle County altogether.
Okay.
And what's that called?
Special.
And sorry, Charlie, how many,
Statistical area or something.
Charlie, how many in the metropolitan area total, including Franklin County? Parts of Franklin County,
How many,
how many people in
in
that,
our MSA? Roughly 230,000 maybe.
really? Wow.
Yeah, it's about it's over.
But the term is not used anymore, is that correct?
The MSA.
MSA is.
Metropolitan.
Statistical area is, because I know I saw some legislation recently which Franklin and Grand Isle were taken out.
Yeah.
And I don't know what about the building was.
This is a different urbanized area.
Those are all the changes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry,
I
the
know, I
last
see.
one, and I don't even wanna say this, on the very last page.
On the very left.
On the last,
On the very last page.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
well, maybe
Well,
not.
I mean, listen, this is the natural resources amendment.
Oh, it's just the,
So the name of the bill
I
is
don't
being
care,
changed to, okay.
good. I don't care. Never
Yes,
mind.
the land use planning.
I thought this was supposed to be like the name of the bill when we go talk
Okay.
about it around the state.
So, an act relating to land use planning, development and housing.
Okay,
PDA.
great. You're okay, we're okay. Oh, I'm over it. Any final questions for Ellen? Ellen, thank you.
Oh my God, we have
Another
10 minutes.
We'll have, I think,
Well, actually, can I say?
yeah,
Because
you, Ellen, you mean
Ellen,
Ellen?
well,
Yeah.
I just wanna let you know, Ellen was kind enough to draft an amendment that would have a transit study of a transportation funding transit, or I'm sorry, a transportation funding study. Similar to the study that's in, it was section 42, is it still section 42?
Well, it's, I know, I just made up a section for it.
Okay,
So
well,
we're replacing it.
but the housing one was
Oh,
42.
42, yes.
Okay, so there is an existing study to study the impact on affordable housing of these changes, because there is likely to be a negative impact on the revenue to the state for affordable housing because of these plans. So
Where would that happen?
that would happen because Act 250 can include that the developer has to pay just an amount to the state for affordable housing. And then the state can use that and has used that to create affordable
A
housing.
lot of our affordable housing developers also have to go through active.
Those are those affordable.
They have to pay too.
Okay, but the private sector should be paying. Large developments should be paying, and they have been paying. So this is a study to see about that. It's more focused on the priority housing incentives, because priority housing won't have as much of an incentive in this construct. That would be a great thing for you to explain. I can explain that.
Are you just talking about the affordable housing study that came over from the House? Okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
she's, and
so-
do you want to explain yours?
yeah, and we'll see if I explain it right. So, and I have a copy.
Is the affordable housing study in here? Okay.
Yeah, so then, there is,
Is this the transportation study?
yeah,
Okay.
but it's quick and easy, cause Ellen is just so,
Is there another?
it's just one page, in case you get sent it around.
Do I have?
Yeah, it's only one
Oh,
page.
okay.
So what this is,
What you're working.
yeah, and it's relative, pretty much almost done. So it's on or before, next, December 15th, 2025. The AOT, and they're on board with this, would consult with these other folks, DHCD, League of Cities and Towns, adding BAFTA, and the Natural Resources Board. Review the revenue that's received by the state, so there's revenue received by the state now for both transit, and there's also a impact fee process that is outside of Act 250, but it can also be handled through Act 250. Okay, but it exists on its own, and unlike other things like stormwater regulations, it doesn't have a mechanism to be used if municipalities take advantage of 1B or 1A rather, and are doing essentially what they're supposed to do. Okay, let me start again.
Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Nobody else has questions for Ellen on the language of our bill.
Well, we had the one that we.
And so I'll just say procedurally, you do not have possession of this bill, it is on the
Right.
floor, and so you will be working on an amendment to propose for the floor.
Yes, and that the goal by this afternoon is to give Ellen direction from myself and Senator Bray and anybody else who wants to look at the amendment and sign on. So neither of these things we looked at are going to the floor. They were for us to respond to and create one final amendment from both of our committees. The three issues I have left are LURB, the downtown exemption, and 2029.
So you're saying this has to be a separate?
Oh, yeah, we had always talked about this being separate. Well, I can't add anything new to this piece. This would have to go through transportation.
Right, and I've talked to them and they're fine with it.
Did they take a vote?
No.
Okay, so that's why it just
All right, so then we'll
needs
do
to
it.
travel separately. You can do it on third reading. That would just make things a lot cleaner because we'd have one bill to look at. That we're encouraging people who have additional amendments. Obviously, for some
Yeah.
people, it means they can't vote for the bill on second reading. But if people have additional amendments, probably best to do it on third reading when people can.
All right, well, this
Support.
is, the language is really ready to go.
Okay, so there's no changes to the language from here.
Right, to adding BAFTA and giving.
We just need a date.
Yeah, which is 12/15/25,
So this year, no, next year.
next year.
Okay,
That would be when the report would be due.
and you've talked to AOT
Yes,
and they're okay.
and they're fine with it, yes.
I kind of just, like, my brain is full.
No, I
People-
understand.
What, do people wanna add this to our bill? I don't know how Senator Gregg would react to that.
I think at this point it should be a separate amendment, sort of like Tanya and I have one on just cause. In the
Yeah.
pilot in the city.
Okay,
So,
well,
and it's like,
All right, I just wanna say that's good, that's an enhancement. If we don't do this, somehow there will be money lost to the state.
right,
For
I
transit.
appreciate that. And projects.
And actually, not just for transit, for construction.
Okay. Any other questions for Ellen? So you have a separate path for this, Senator Harrison. I think, we'll let it travel separately. I do encourage people to have additional considerations and amendments for third reading because it's gonna be hard enough for people to absorb everything we're doing in the natural resources amendment, then the finance amendment, then the appropriations amendment, then the final negotiated amendment. Those are the amendments we're looking at for tomorrow.
Right, but tomorrow we're only presenting one unified amendment, that's the objective.
That we are trying at the caucus of the whole to get people to the end when you vote on all these amendments and you vote on the last one. This is what you ultimately get. That's the best we can do, but each of those amendments has to be voted on or we don't get to the next one.
Why can't we just have a uniform amendment?
Because they came from different committees that have different reports. So that's the way it is, but I encourage people,
We can't combine this into a single.
Yeah, I thought that was what we.
not things that have already been voted out and then voted on by other committees. Like Bloomer can help us make a final addendum of what the final bill will look like. But he can't take away the procedure of voting through all the amendments that have already been voted out of each committee.
So this is actually not unusual, it's just, this bill is longer. So I think, I'm keeping track of all the pieces, I think it's gonna be fine.
Okay, I think we're just gonna we'll have to ask.
Keep
people.
loose anywhere in here?
I'm giving myself a
That we are working on doing that in a responsible way, but that's why I would say I wouldn't try to add other amendments tomorrow. I would wait till Friday.
Agreed. So I thought we did need Ellen on this last piece on the interim exemptions that we were talking about. Did we?
I think it's kind of an up or down vote from the committee. We had originally voted out full housing amendments to create
Oh, you're
density
sure.
and limit the cost and the delays to housing projects. Yeah, so I'll tell Ellen what we ultimately decide. So people are okay with no LURB name change in 2029.
Yes.
Okay, so the last thing we're discussing as a committee, and I don't want to speak for Senator Cummings, but I do wish she was here because anytime I said, oh, well, we could have more for PHPs here or there, she's really concerned about workforce housing and more units. I am too.
But
Density is what Act 250 reduces.
no, we are all with you
Yes.
on the density piece. I think what I hear Wendy saying,
Mm-hmm.
and what I think we have to, and to go to channel also our
Yes.
workforce housing piece.
Yes.
What I think I hear Wendy and Ann both saying is that unless we qualify it as affordable, it will be, that it will be, that your concerns about gentrification, that we will just be developing what developers can afford to do, which are higher end, construction projects.
If we put an affordability clause in, they have to make some units more expensive to make some less expensive. That is what the regulatory conversation in the country is right now, is that if you have a community that has inclusionary zoning and requires a certain number of affordable units, the best thing you can do is give them more density, because that allows them to get the density they need to not then put additional cost on the other units, which we want to also make lowercase affordable for people who live in Vermont.
Okay, actually, that's a whole conversation, and we dealt with that where in my former community, and developers made that assertion and it was not true. They did not, they just have less profit. They don't have to increase the prices, but that's a whole conversation, but I can't accept that that's reality necessarily. But
It is
Why
like
is
the
it-
research consensus that the future
I'll
will
get you
trust
other-
share.
but
You can look at Minneapolis, you can look at Dallas, you could.
I have experience in Jupiter, Florida, which is a smaller place and more, actually similar to Vermont, I would say, in Minneapolis. But why is 75 units not enough?
Because in our downtowns, they're talking about large blighted properties,
75 is a
holes
lot.
in our downtowns.
I mean, I can't imagine.
75 is just not a lot.
So
in
maybe for
Rivers
Burlington, maybe in Burlington.
But
But then the
75.
municipality can decide.
75 would be a lot for Hattiesboro,
Yeah,
but you're designated downtown.
right. I just don't want it imposed on the town.
It's not imposed because the municipality still has the full control to decide.
As long as
This
they
says
have
they don't go
some-
through the municipality with new Act 250 they're getting more of Act 250 to regulate themselves. And then they don't have to be appealed again through Act 250.
Right, but if they're not at tier 1A,
Designated downtowns are all tier 1A.
oh, if they apply, I'm hearing feedback that some might not want to apply.
Then they can deny the density of the project that I'm talking about.
I hope so.
The municipality
That's-
has control. This is about duplicating that with Act 250.
So where is their control if it says no permit or permit amendment?
Because this is Act 250,
This
not
is just
municipal.
Act 250,
Yeah.
not municipal.
Municipal, we let them appeal even
Right.
now 5 units because we took away our 25 unit exemption.
Right.
And the municipality, we are putting in the driver's seat, which we promised them we'd do last year.
Right.
Remember,
Well,
we said to them, we're
driver's seat,
asking you not to discriminate against multifamily housing, but we're gonna get you out of Act 250, so you only have to make this decision once.
right, but this would be effective immediately, right?
It would be effective when all the other exemptions are, which
Right, which is relatively
29.
immediately.
it's either upon.
27 or 29.
No, that's when they
No,
would
that's,
expire,
Yeah,
but it would be effective immediately.
I believe it's effective immediately. I mean, I haven't looked at
past
the
it,
date,
it's on
scoured the
past.
date, but.
It has a bunch of section.
A take,
except-
effective.
Joint one.
It's unpassed.
So is there anyone here who represents smaller municipalities? No.
I hope so, yeah.
Okay, so do you think they're ready for this?
I could ask-
The smaller places don't have downtowns.
Yeah, they don't have designated downtowns. They're just.
Well-
We have 23, I think
We
we
have
have 23
23, yeah.
designated
They're
downtowns,
just-
they're the largest cities in the state.
And they have the
Right,
staff to
Bellas
decide
Falls.
as a municipality how much density they want. This is saying,
Bellas Falls is that, and they don't have the staff, but
is Bellas Falls the designated downtown?
yeah, yes, they are,
I
they
don't
were
think-
actually the first one. Yes,
We don't have, I don't know who in the room, So
All right,
I don't have a
I
map.
obviously,
So,
Yeah,
right,
but
I have concerns, but the three of you vote for it.
so it's,
right, so there's no formal votes even being taken. If the consensus is that you're okay.
so your argument, I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
Your argument is that all density will drive down costs. I mean, that if we enable
That
this
the
for all
research
housing.
consensus in the country is that the more you reduce, I mean, Charlie can tell you this as a professional planner as well. We heard this from the Pew Charitable Trust. They have done research in every city in the country. We have that on file, on record, that the less housing units you have, the higher rent increases are, the higher your homelessness rate is. We have people in motels who cannot find anywhere to rent. Not that it's, a penthouse in Burlington or not, but Moortown has 0% vacancy. That's what we heard from folks. They can't even condemn buildings.
No,
because there are not enough units.
We're clear on
The
that.
more expensive you make a unit or the fewer units you make, the higher the cost is per unit and the fewer housing units you have. It's kind of.
Right, and this doesn't exempt them from municipal.
No,
permits.
in fact,
only-
municipalities, this is what they asked for.
Well,
Get us out of.
the designated. The few designated downtowns, they have asked for this.
This is only for designated. Yeah, in fact,
Well, no,
Burlington,
it's
and
designated downtowns and within a half mile, Newtown
Yeah.
Center, so designated
it's
neighborhood
not,
development
no,
area.
I'm saying just for downtowns.
I thought you were saying just for downtowns, but then you said you weren't, you were saying more.
So that's an important
That's
clarification.
what we originally passed was full housing exemptions in all of the designated
Okay,
areas.
on page 43,
Yeah.
lines 12 to 21.
Mm-hmm.
This is where my understanding of what you want to do is on line 15,
Mm-hmm.
you want to delete the 75 unit
No,
limit.
She doesn't.
yeah, that's not what I said.
Okay, good. So tell me what then.
That we would add a new sentence and pull downtowns out
Yeah, okay.
and make
Yeah,
that.
I thought you said that and then you backed off of that. Okay.
No, I said that plus the ring around it,
Yeah, so what's the ring around it?
a half mile around a designated downtown.
Okay, so it's just that and a half mile, not the Newtown Center
No,
or the designated growth or the designated neighborhood
No.
development.
just downtown.
So only for downtowns, we're looking at only for downtowns with the half mile.
Yes.
Allowing. Lifting the Act 250 requirements for
Completely.
all housing.
Generally, someone can correct me, but if you've gotten a designated downtown designation, you have quite high staff capacity in your municipality to make the best decisions for your municipality.
Bellows Falls did not have that. So that's one example.
Then they can just say no,
They don't need to say yes.
they're just
What
not.
I'm just pushing back
Yeah.
because sometimes we make assumptions that aren't accurate.
So
I think I can go with the no limit with the designated downtown development and 1/2 mile. I am gonna check things out in the
Okay.
meantime,
Talk to
because I'll have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Charlie, have you just pulled up the 23?
I've got the map, but there's such little dots on the state of the map.
Okay, it's just the
Yeah.
map,
okay.
okay, yeah.
But if you want to see, if you have a question about one of.
Well,
No,
I think,
Rockingham, I mean, you could.
I think it would be helpful.
Okay, Peter has the 23.
Okay,
And-
what are
or
the
actually,
23?
does Dover have one?
Designated downtown.
Dover does not.
Okay,
Can we just
Can I-
run through the
Well,
23?
Yes.
Okay, Berry, Bellows Falls, Bennington, Brandon, Brattleboro, Bristol, Burlington, Hardwick. Middlebury, Montpelier, Newport, Pulteney, Randolph, Rutland, Springfield, St. Albans, St. Johnsbury, Stowe, Virgins, Waterbury, White River Junction. Wilmington, Windsor, and Winooski.
Grand Island,
I did not say.
None of the islands.
that's right. What did I hear that?
St. Albans.
St. Albans, St. Johnsbury,
Was there a G?
Newport.
Was there a G everywhere?
There's no G's. Hardwick.
Hardwick is.
Goes from Hardwick to Middlebury.
Hardwick.
What's above Hardwick?
Pardon me?
What's above Hardwick?
Burlington.
So Morrisville isn't.
That is correct. And it's because some municipalities don't want.
Right,
Yeah, right.
They're lost.
Katie.
Thank you. Katie Gallagher with the Vermont Natural Resources Council, but if I could speak as a member of the Waterbury Planning Commission in our downtown, we are about to pass updated bylaws which are trying to increase density, and as part of that, we are removing regulating by density. So we don't have any unit numbers. And so we're regulating by other mechanisms, but I'm just trying to think through this in terms of how we would address this for our area. And I'm just thinking about that time question of this wouldn't give us any time to be able to address that change. So if you were to move forward, I would think that giving towns some ability to potentially make any changes if we wanted to add back a cap or to just think about, you know, maybe we felt like it wasn't necessary, but just to say it might be helpful.
What happens when you don't have a cap? They come to you with a project.
They came, yeah, so
And it's form-based or?
it's not technically form-based, but yeah, we would use performance standards and other ways to, you know, we wanted to say, we don't care how many units you have in a building, what we care about is that there's parking and there's all these.
I almost think that speaks to this. You know, it's just saying like density, you're artificially reducing the number of units. And you're moving away from that, which I applaud.
Yeah.
Because you can have very few units that are huge.
Right.
You can have penthouses, you can have something that takes up the whole floor. People have asked us to stop using the number of units because that reduces project density, whereas you can often have a large number of bedrooms.
Right, but there could be unintended consequences because Act 250 takes care of a lot of other permitting and brings in like the transportation stuff. And it could be that towns haven't had the ability to think about what they would do without Act 250.
I will say, I don't wanna speak for them, but our League of Citizen Towns really asked us last year.
I agree.
To say like, okay, you're taking tools away from us. We are living with them, they're living with stuff in here, but they want to be able to have control over these decisions and not have good projects in their core dense area appealed a second time. When Shelburne has asked for this, and they're not even a designated downtown, but what happens is you have a 60-unit project the town has allowed that becomes 10 single-family homes because the developer, who could be in my case, it's a couple who this is their retirement, cannot go through the process again. They can't afford that.
Right.
They can't duplicate.
I understand, and that's an issue. I just wanna make sure the other towns are prepared for this going away.
I think it's a question of capacity of, you know, we do have a planning director and a zoning administrator, but that's, you know, 2 staff members, and these would be really significant projects and they could be. And Waterbury did choose to be a 1-acre town for the benefits of Act 250 until a year, 2 years ago.
So if someone came to you with a 100-unit project, you have a lot of authority in your municipal process to decide on whether or not that fits the scale with other metrics.
We do, but I would say we haven't had to face that scale yet. And so I'm just, you know, I don't want to speak on behalf of the town or my other planning commission members, but what my concern is.
So this bill would have, if you had a PHP come to you and say, we want to do 100 units, that would already be allowed by passage.
Yeah.
So what makes this different?
Well, because we're lifting the cap altogether.
But the PHP has already in this bill.
Yeah, that's right. The PHP's cap is lifted.
Jamie and then Charlie. Jamie.
Just a question on your
Yeah.
proposal, if you lift the cap,
Mhm.
would you, what about the mapped river corridors floodplains?
That would remain, the language.
So
would-
that has those areas.
Yeah, which again, I supported the floodplain bill because we need dense housing elsewhere. We need to get people out of these floodplains and into dense areas. And
Exempting
all we're
river
doing
corridors.
is delaying and de-densifying these projects.
So this only, okay, and then, sorry, Charlie.
Charlie.
I just wanna just kind of bring us back to the statutory construct in Vermont, which is municipalities really can't rely, like in the municipal permitting process, there is no reliance on Act 250.
Right.
municipalities do their own zoning, they have to stand on their own two legs, and presumably that's what they are doing. Like, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this whole conversation about this, like, the municipalities are relying on Act 250.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're actually statutorily allowed to do that.
Right.
It's a separate
Right.
permitting process, it is a separate layer.
Right.
on
Not
top.
only that, but there are still many permits that a
And-
project would have to get through
And
A&R.
yeah, and as Kate mentioned, you know, if they wanted to rely, then that became, you know, a 1 acre town so that more things went to Act 250 and they, you know, but those are not our largest municipalities with downtowns that we're talking about here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so, but we're changing the rules suddenly. I guess the other rules that we're changing, there's time to adapt, but this one is sudden. That's,
Is there a trick, is there could we put in a time element to it? Would that make it more palatable? So that it takes effect?
I need some housing now.
no,
We need to go home and say, municipalities, do your best. And you don't have to do anything until you put caps back in. You just don't. Municipalities get a lot of.
This doesn't force a municipality to do
Yeah.
anything. What it does is it allows them within their own municipal construct to build as much housing as they can build.
Man.
Megan Sullivan, Grand Chamber of Commerce. We have a number of developers who are our members. I don't know any who, upon passage of this, is going to say, let's roll out that 200 unit project we've had in our back pocket for Bellows Falls
Right.
tomorrow. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's not only municipalities who may need to adjust to this, but developers are also going to
Yeah,
adjust to this. This
all of a
is
sudden
a
a new
huge opportunity for them
Yeah.
that they're not going to just be able to say like, okay, tomorrow we're gonna go and do just tons of projects. So I think it may be implemented immediately, but it's still gonna take time, both on the developer planning side as well as the municipal side. Will likely, if people need to adjust to that.
And that's what happened last year with some of the municipal changes. They became effective upon passage at the governor's request, I would say. But that didn't mean tomorrow you're just cutting your house in half. Not only does it take time for someone to do that, but it gave time for municipalities to say, this is happening and we need to set our rules now sooner than later. So this would give a municipality the opportunity to say, oh, we see what the state just did. We need to go back and do something. And I'm happy to come to your planning commission and get yelled at. That's what I like to do now. And say like, you know, we're actually giving you the freedom to decide that no density lets you decide based on other merit-based aspects of the project.
What I think you're proposing, I mean, what we're proposing here is an immediate opportunity that doesn't have to be acted on immediately, but that it's an opportunity that immediately exists to build as much housing as a designated downtown with a half a mile ring around it can build. I think that's
Right,
all
and
we're
that something needs to be done for market rate, because market rate is getting increasingly out of reach of a middle class.
You're hoping doing that
Yes.
to drive down market rate.
Yes,
That's, I think,
because density lowers the cost of each unit.
except in
generally,
Manhattan.
it's
Except in
except in Manhattan. It's all about.
Okay, but we have, you know, there are proposals
don't
on
have-
the table to increase Manhattan's housing units just by building up by 500,000. And, you know, we do a lot of other stuff on second homes and short-term rentals. We can't control that, but it is research consensus around the country that density has brought down rent increases.
And
that
this
is my
Generally, oh yeah, totally.
And I think this supports this is our smart growth values at play. We're kind of giving it an interim opportunity to see how it works. If it fails, we can always change it. And I think this, I am willing, and I know it's bigger, but I'm willing to give this a shot.
That's a
because-
great point.
And this is interim.
Joyce, I'm just here to get my bag, so.
Oh.
This is just interim. We can see how it works. We can see what gets put into play in 5 years.
Right.
How the reasons get put in.
Because eventually the exemption after that is in 1A, which is this, is supposed to be all economic activity.
Okay,
Right.
so I'm saying, I think now that we've clarified
That's a great point.
that, thank you. That this is an opportunity that immediately would exist. It's an interim period. It's not forever. It's kind of like a pilot to see if we give a green light to housing development in our designated downtowns with a half a mile ring around them, see what happens. I'm willing to try that because we're so desperate for housing. And it supports our smart growth values, which is to have it in our designated downtowns.
Thank you. Senator Brock, is there anything you wanna add?
And it exempts river corridors.
That language doesn't change in the second.
That doesn't change.
It doesn't,
So I mean, that wouldn't change.
The move for interim to 2029 is essential. Anything shorter than that, if you have an intransigence there, it's all failed, I think.
That's
I am concerned
means a lot coming from you. Yeah.
about the complexity again. I'm not at all sure that this is going to be any faster in terms of getting housing than we need right now.
I do like the May on the JOs. Yeah.
That's helpful.
That's helpful, yeah.
So I'm still a little skeptical about this, the size, the complexity, and so on. I'm not convinced that this is going to do anything material. I think we spent a lot, and we spent a lot of time. We haven't spent enough time because we're doing all these changes on the fly without have enough time and talk to enough people who are affected to know the unintended consequences of some of the things we're doing. That worries me.
That's true, but that is why I'm okay with it as an interim thing. Because
We can afford to fail for the next 2 or 3 years.
we can't afford to fail at all.
I mean, that's basically what we're saying. If we're moving this because, well, we gotta get it done and we're passing stuff that we haven't read.
If we were too scared to do this, we're never gonna get to the grand stakeholder agreement that was created, that we let go of land use concerns in our population centers. And we let them do, I mean, really often what happens if you have an existing blighted property, this happened all over my area, is that can become another commercial use. That can go from a bowling lane to a car wash. I pass all these things every day. But if people fight it for a new use for housing, that's when it becomes a car wash. So what Act 250 does is not just reduce the density, it says, fine, then we're just gonna do a postal depot instead of 25 units of housing.
No, I think this is a good green light and it's a qualified green light.
Right.
Because it's an interim measure.
Some people might say we're doing too little, some people will say we moved a mountain, some people will say we've taken dynamite to the mountain. This is a huge shift for the legislature, and I would just hate to see it die. And it's really built on the people in the room who started working on it 6 months or more, or decades before us.
And I would say, to go to we haven't had enough time, you're right, we probably haven't, but we did spend a lot of time on this in our initial discussion.
Well, we spent a lot of time on the housing piece. We haven't spent a lot of time on the rest of it.
Well, but this is a piece of the housing piece that we had discussed, at least there's foundation for this discussion we've had.
As I say, I have skepticism.
Okay, you're allowed to have skepticism. I appreciate you saying that your bright red line is the 2029 deadline. Others have heard that. I will take that to Senator Bray.
It gives us 5 years to see what we can.
When
Gives us
Senator
4
Bray
years.
have constantly said these are all eminently negotiable, and I think that's where we are. So
So
really
you're gonna come back,
proud of
we expect to hear from them, and you're gonna have a discussion when, today,
12:45.
and that will take how long?
More than 15
Senator
minutes.
Cummings isn't here. I mean, this is 3 things.
Yeah.
So, we both don't like to sort of like keep going around in circles. And I don't think the pro tem wants that either. Cause, we're on the floor at 1.
Correct.
I don't know if you know
What's
what
it
day or
on?
time it is.
Before time.
Okay, so we're in at 12:45, so this is not being decided necessarily in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We need to give Ella direction today so we can be ready for the caucus of the whole tomorrow. So
So is it the first time that we're gonna see this bill in terms of what's negotiated tomorrow?
the goal is to get that to you as soon as Ellen can finish drafting it this afternoon.
Tomorrow morning.
I'm saying this afternoon, because if you tell Ray tomorrow, it's gonna be
right before.
No, I mean, we will see more of it later this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
And then tomorrow morning, we will have discussion for the committee. So
Yes, we have so many of this committee things to do. Oh, yeah.
We have 7:04. We have a bunch of other things.
We might need to start a little earlier.
We have at the moment an hour of free time tomorrow. from
Oh,
okay.
11 to 12.
There you have
8:30.
it.
Starting at 8:30.
We're
Yes.
starting at 9.
Yes,
Starting at 9.
We have
and we still have an hour for.
7:04 from.
Maybe
9
we
to
need to
9.
fill that 3 times now.
This, we could have the.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice.
Fill up
Yeah.
the Why don't we start at 8:30 and start with,
So what I wanna say, just in anticipation of talking to Senator Bray, is that I will fight for these things. If any of these things were to change, you would know about it as soon as I can tell you. If you still have concerns, you are free to introduce an amendment. Again, I would hope that it's for third reading, but if you say tier 3, I can't live with I will have a final amendment that at least comes from Senator Bray and I and other members of our committee that wanna sign on. But if there's still something you can't live with that we didn't discuss today, you are a free agent. And you have control over whether or not we suspend this.
well, yeah, I just want to see everything as
Yeah.
soon as there's something to see.
Yes, I will
So that
make
we
sure
have a chance to read it before it comes to voting on
that's
it.
a huge priority.
It's
He
always
will,
helpful.
yes, because both committees have to look at it and take a final vote regardless of who signs on.
so
That's a good
when
point.
are we
Vote will
making
be
time for
obviously
that?
tomorrow
That's
morning.
what we need to fill that out.
So we're still meeting at 9 and we have an hour to look at the final amendment, take a vote, decide who wants to sign on.
Charlie is back.
No, I won't be here. Good luck.
You're not here tomorrow? Okay.
He has work too.
we have 5 minutes. Holly is here from the HCB. They are okay with the kitchen thing.
Yes, I think we just wanted to clarify that that was.
Just identify yourself, Polly.
Oh, sorry. Holly Major, Vermont Housing Conservation Board. We're referring to section 58, is it? 53, sorry. The limitations on municipal bylaws that adds the conversion of hotels or motels to permanent housing and defines that as including access to a food preparation area. There are scenarios where we are converting a hotel, or we are helping a nonprofit acquire a hotel for short-term use as a shelter leased through AHS, and then for conversion.
Right.
I believe that is still gonna fall under here through the emergency shelter provision.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to clarify that, and clarify that this language didn't mean we had to immediately put kitchenettes in any acquired hotel.
That when it's then being considered a permanently affordable housing unit, that's a different distinction. Does that feel clear for you?
That does, there are always unique real estate,
Yeah, I know.
types like single room occupancy that
I
wouldn't
know.
fall under this, but I don't think this
Yeah.
regulates out us taking on those projects. It just means that they don't, that
Right.
those types of projects can still be more regulated by the municipality as it is
Right.
right now.
And food preparation might still give you the opportunity to decide on certain appliances or not certain.
Yes, if we wanted to really capture something like an SRO, we would say access to a food preparation area, not that it's specific to the unit, but I don't know if you wanted to do edits like that at this
If
point.
it's okay, I think we should live with it.
I think we can live with it, as long as it's not requiring us to put a kitchenette in every hotel we're helping to acquire.
Right.
Then we're fine, and I think this is saying that
This gives you flexibility.
there's the existing
Okay.
flexibility will
Yeah.
stand, it's just saying that municipalities can still regulate that, but
Right.
can't regulate if a kitchenette's going.
Yes, and hopefully, everybody is given a microwave and a.
Absolutely, and under our building standards for affordable housing, having access to a kitchen area is
Yeah.
part of that, part of our standard operating procedure.
Okay, so we'll live
But
with
that's
that
for temporary shelters.
Temporary shelters are separate are covered under G, which is emergency shelter.
Okay.
So this is just adding.
This is, and it just says food preparation. It doesn't say full kitchen with 6 burners.
Yes.
So that's not
Which
what
is what I-
Senator Cummings understands, right?
It says, no, it
Food
says
preparation.
food preparation.
Yeah, facilities for.
And then we're adding and building codes and local, yeah.
So this isn't change, my understanding is this is not changing the building standards that we need to build to. It's just saying what type of hotel conversions are limited and how they can be regulated by municipalities. So it's just about the regulation, not about the buildings.
Do you think we're okay with this language? It gives you flexibility. If it doesn't, guess where you'll be in January? Right back here and we will change it.
Well, we
That
have.
is a mere 7 months away.
We have a real estate transaction we're hoping to get
Yeah.
across the line imminently that we
But
wouldn't
no,
want
that's
this
what I
to
really
hold
don't
up.
want. I don't want this to hold that up. That's exactly it.
But my understanding is this
Yeah.
is just applying to the regulations, not to the building code. And if I'm wrong there and this changes our building code, let me know.
I'm gonna,
Oh, you should have a pin in that because I believe this morning SNRE added and building codes
Yeah.
to meet any other building codes and local
Yes.
municipal
Yes.
minimum housing standards. That wouldn't affect. well,
But again, that's.
Fire code.
That wouldn't affect.
it might, and these are imminent purchases and
No, no,
transitions.
That's why I'm mentioning it to you.
Yeah.
Cause if you mention, you may wanna clarify that.
Yeah, I can clarify that. I think the easiest way would be to strike that second sentence and just hotels converted to permanent housing development, period.
If we're gonna touch that one, then I wanna make sure it's access to those things. I mean, obviously, like each, I don't know if you wanna say each unit has sleeping and sanitation, because you're not generally dealing with places that have shared bathrooms right now.
So I guess my fundamental.
What page is it?
It's
It's page
88.
88. At the last
Yeah.
2 lines, and they evidently SNRE added this and building codes and any other building codes and local municipal.
So I guess my fundamental question here is, does this apply only to what can be regulated by the municipality? Or does this apply to any transaction that we do? Because we can have a municipality that does not choose to regulate the.
I don't know, I can let you know, because I know it's in the section that says you can't make it go through active, you can't regulate its use.
Yeah.
But I'm worried that it's saying, if they say, oh, but we don't want an SRO, or we don't want a shared kitchen,
Yeah.
they can stop the project, they can use this to stop a project that's in the works.
Hopefully I don't see that.
Well, hopefully it's not good enough when, Senator Kitchen's gonna wanna be involved at some point if we put money aside, specifically thinking we're getting people out of impermanent motel situations,
So,
and a project gets stopped.
okay,
200 units.
it sounds like one thought is to just. If you,
Strike the building code piece and make sure it's clear that it's access to food preparation and sanitation things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be,
Yeah,
that's something that we could certainly, would cover any scenario.
but you're saying food preparation or access to food preparation?
we can work on this. If you can go to Senator Bray. Because I can't be in a million places at once. It was Senator Watson actually who proposed this.
Yeah.
So if you could go to Senator Watson and speak to that, and if you see anyone from appropriations, the concern for me is how intent we are on starting to transition people to permanent housing from motels.
Yeah.
Some people will be very happy with a shared kitchen. You are in the best position to flexibly determine what facilities make sense for whom. And to give people quality of life that they don't have in hotels right now. Sorry, thing. Well, that's
I have no germs.
okay. Cool.
Sorry about that.
No, you just sit tight, you don't have to speak right now. We can come back and change this, but if we delay a motel project right now, that affects more committees than any of ours, and this is
This is essentially.
the housing, human services and appropriations.
So maybe this is actually an Ellen conversation, just to
Yeah.
make sure that this is applying to the municipal bylaws and not
Yes,
a regulation that we have to build to.
right.
And
Okay.
if that
I'm
is
gonna
the
leave
case,
this
I
open
think
for
that-
12:45, and if people can try and,
Can I connect to Valerie?
can you connect with that? Yes,
Yeah.
you can copy me, Magali, if you email Ellen and put me and Polly on it and just say, if this has any potential to stop a project because a municipality could make a decision that this needs different standards that you can you could accommodate in the budget that you have, then you have a problem.
And I'm sure there are codes that already regulate this. Where people can live, I mean, there's a temporary lodging and permanent lodging.
It's section 53.
There's already codes.
53.
53.
But they, they may have a project soon where a unit is weird shaped. It's for somebody who,
What is,
I
can you tell more about that project?
I
I mean, not about what it is, but what,
But it is the purchase of a hotel that's being used for shelter. Short-term use continuing to be for shelter, but probably through master lease situation.
Yeah.
And then with the intent for a long-term conversion to housing, it's just going to be a phased project. And so we want to allow phased projects to continue. I think if this allows the status quo to continue for those phased projects, that's okay.
Yeah.
If it changes the status quo so that we immediately have to add the catch.
Right.
That's when it's problematic, and
Right.
that's what I wanna ask Ellen, is does
Yes.
this change the current regulatory?
Right. And I don't think that would have been the intent
Yeah.
of natural resources. We just need to make sure. Because human services and appropriations can't learn on the floor that now projects they funded or anticipated are being held up. And
yeah, and I
Or
think
cost.
the codes are actually more, would have more in it, like food storage, for example, it wouldn't just be food preparation.
why don't we let Polly?
Yeah, I'm
they
gonna
have
go
one
live. I'm so sorry.
So we have those changes that I'm taking to Senator Bray. Is text an okay way to update people if anything materially
correct.
changes or when you can anticipate seeing the draft?
Yeah.
And I may not know before you know. I'm gonna try and keep up to it.
So are we trying to
Thank
make
you for something with a really corny little concept. And really, thank you, because I don't. We always knew this, that we had 5 or more different housing bills or regulatory bills, and this was gonna be hard at the end, but I don't want the logistics to kill this.
Okay, so I think we're all,
Yeah.
are we ready to sign off on the things we have talked about?
We're not doing that now, right?
There's just no formal sign off required.
No, but for those carrying the water, I mean, cause the big deal that we just discussed,
Blurb name change downtown exemption 2029. I've heard where people are on that, and I'm going to bring everyone's individual voice into the process, just like they are with their different
and
characters.
a hotel motels question.
I've yes, I've recircled that, that's a
Recircle it, and then the downtowns, the full housing
Yes.
exemption for, yeah. Because I know there are concerns, and I'm just not aware of how aren't supporting, if we do this as an interim thing. How this isn't supporting our smart growth.
Right, and eventually getting
Downtown
where
development.
people agree.
The theory
On
is
tier 1A.
great, I love the theory.
Yeah, I know, but I'm
It's
worried
just
about
I'm
what
worried
I'm
about the
missing.
reality.
I know, I get that, and but I also think, I'm also a little okay, because it's not for forever, it's an interim measure.
But what gets built,
Will be
building
there forever.
something is a commitment. It won't be there forever, but it'll be a commitment.
We need more things built.
No,
So,
I agree with you. And
Yeah.
every-
yeah,
All right.
Okay,
yeah, this
I'm
is
not
not about
saying
single family
don't
homes.
build, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
don't build density, I believe in density.
Right. Great. So we agree, and if we can't get some interim things that build housing, we're not going home with housing.
I agree, and I wanted the JOs gone from the
Yeah,
beginning,
and
I've been
that's
talking about that
great.
for 2 years.
So I'm gonna double check on what exactly we're saying. I'm just gonna check on all 5 of these items.
I just wanna make sure we're doing, yeah.
Yes, but this is extremely close. And let's keep it together.
I think we're in good shape.
We're in really good shape, and that's thanks to everyone being patient and hanging with us. So we are done.